Hello, people of the internet. I am Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir, and here is my long-awaited review for Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans Season 2. And of course, the person who helped me review the first season of Iron-Blooded Orphans with me is back again. Give it up for fellow new-type pilot, Mr. Denny Roth, aka Draco Rollin, aka the creator of the webcomic series Martial Star, aka whatever the hell you want to call him, your friendly neighborhood Sasquatch. Give it up for this guy.
Wherever you want to go, Andres, I'll make that dream happen.
That was perfect, man. So yeah, this is a lot of people have asked me over the last 2 or so years, when are you going to review season 2 of IBO? And the thing was, it's like, things were in the way. I did eventually watch the series as it was coming out, after it was all said and done in Japanese, and eventually I was waiting on Denny, and so we both eventually got our shit together and binged through the entirety of it in English this time around. And so here we are. And before we actually go into the series itself, I did want to take the chance to talk about the reaction to our first review for IBO Season 1.
Can I cut in here, since you called about how you watch the series?
Yeah.
I have it still DVR'd for the Toonami run.
Right, and you told me you were telling me you were recording it as it was on Toonami.
Yes, but never sat down to finish it. But what I did do was I binge watched it on Crunchyroll with the Japanese audio and the English subtitles.
So I pulled it watch it on this time. Which means you could have just watched it from the very get-go on Crunchyroll.
I was waiting on you to tell me when we were going to be ready. You never said a thing about it for 2 years.
I told you. I was waiting on you.
2 years ago.
Every time people would ask me on YouTube, it's like, when are you going to review IBO? I would tell them, whenever Denny's ready.
Yeah, but did you ever tell me this?
Yes, I did.
Oh, no.
Yes, I did. Whatever. So anyways... This review has been a long time coming, and yeah, because the reaction was so big, relatively big compared to my other like podcast style reviews, which normally go into like usually within like the hundreds, rarely dipping to the thousands, like 1,000, 2,000. But here we have our first review, which was at nearly 26,000 views. With 242 likes and 23 dislikes, and a lot of comments from a lot of very passionate Gundam fans. So we did get quite a bit of criticism saying that it took too long for us to actually talk about the series. In fact, I know for a fact that people are going to complain about the fact that we're not talking about the season 2 right at this very moment. But we
gotta wait another 15 minutes before we actually start that. Don't you know how these reviews run?
I guess not, because these were a lot of people who are new to the KaijuNoir channel, which, for those who don't know, yeah, this is generally how I do my reviews, where we just shoot the shit, while also having some casual discussion, some occasional funny moments along the way as we review this, the topic at hand. And for those there were people who did show appreciation for this casual style of reviewing. I guess I don't follow any Gundam YouTubers, but I guess maybe this just isn't a common thing for podcast-style Gundam reviews, but people did show their appreciation for it, and I'm very glad. I'm very thankful for everybody who stuck around, and apologies for the 2-year wait since putting up that first review on January 15th, 2017. But thank you very much for everybody who's here, who's waited this long and are returning, or for people who are coming in and seeing this channel for the first time simply because, hey, someone's talking about IBO Season 2.
Hi, new people.
For those who are just visiting us for the first time, welcome, and prepare, folks. This is a long one. And so yeah, the reaction to Gundam IBO for overall has been quite interesting, because I've noticed for a lot of people this was their first introduction to Gundam. This was like their generation's Gundam wing, as Denny and I explained in our review for Season 1. He and I were introduced to Gundam via Toonami back in the 90s. No, not 90s. This was like 2001, I believe. And
yeah, it would have been the early aughts.
And yeah, for many people, the Iron Blood Orphans was like the next generation Gundam series for them. And yeah, it's really cool. You know, we had a lot of people who are fans of IBO, a lot of detractors of IBO. It's especially with season 2. It's certain the whole series has definitely was somewhat of a departure stylistically, narrative wise, artistic art wise, animation wise. What do you call it? Aesthetic wise.
I'd argue theme-wise. I mean, the themes of Season 2 seem to be carrying over some of the themes from Season 1, such as independence and striking out against all odds, but also has another underlying theme of, you know, hubris, which seems to be, I think, the bigger underlying theme of Season 2 now is just hubris in characters I love and characters I wish would have fucking died the first episode they showed up on. We'll get to that.
And I guess like that sort of hubris that's usually tends to come from, in a traditional Gundam sense, the hubris, like usually it's the villains that tend to fall victim to their hubris as the humble upstart protagonist, then lead the charge and eventually come out on top. Here, we kind of get some of that, but more in the case of like the roles are reversed here, where the protagonists are the victims of their own hubris for the most part, I guess. But before going into that, but yeah, it's very interesting how there are a lot of people who have very strong emotions on either side of the critical spectrum for Mobile Suit Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans. Of course, you know, everybody's going to come away with a very different opinion. Everyone's going to get something different out of this series. So it's only natural that people are going to have a difference of opinion. So, spoiler alert, we really dug the hell out of Iron Blooded Orphans, both Season 1 and Season 2. So, for the most part, this is definitely going to be a positive review. And, you know, we're going to straight up, you know, with spoiling things, I'm giving Season 2 a very strong recommendation. So, for those who would disagree with us and you hated Season 2 or you found it disappointing in any way, that's perfectly all right. And that, you know, there's no need to, you know, lambast other people for having a difference of opinions.
Yeah, especially on a show like this that deals and portrays very strong, very knee-jerk emotional reactions to specific ways things are portrayed. Like with Season 1, I thought the biggest thing about Season 1 primarily was like the use of child soldiers, which is something we still see today in some underdeveloped regions of the world, and that bears a strong knee-jerk reaction to things.
Oh yeah, and even Gundam 00 sort of touched on this, but I think IBO took that concept to like the next level.
I haven't seen 00, so I think that may need to be our next big project here, unless you want us to do G Gundam.
Oh, that may be something we could do in the near future.
But I think the biggest thing with this is because of, and I think it has to do with a combination of tone and theme, whereas Gundam as a war drama setting place during the late 1970s had a lot of political turmoil during that time, because I think you can almost tie in Gundam to a lot of political turmoil going on at the time. And
you can also make the argument that like the creators behind Gundam were like the generation that, while they may not have experienced World War II directly, they were still like the generation following the generation that experienced World War II. So there's still some influence from post-war Japan spreading into the next generation. While here in in current Japan, the current generation of Gundam fans are so widely, you know, separated from World War II that it's like barely a blip on their radar, mentally speaking.
But I think the newer fans, they're disconnected from that particular type of warfare, and the one they're used to now is stuff like the Iraq War and a lot of the other political turmoil going on that's been going on for like the last 10 or so years. That's what they're used to.
I definitely got that vibe from once again Gundam 00. I feel like they did focus on like a fictionalized version of the war in the Middle East, and obviously that was made in 2007, so that was right around the time where like the Iraqi war was still in very huge, you know, very big on the big in the public mindset. Remember, you know, we're 10 years away from that now, 12 years to be exact, but, yeah, you know, I can assume that still lingered on, and that led to the idea of the sort of political climate they established for the world of Iron Blooded Orphans.
it's not only that, but also a little bit of the socio-political climate as well, because we have Mars, which is effectively the new colony for the series here, or one of the colonies that's ruled by these larger economic blocks, but there's so much poverty because there's so little oversight with the people and what happens on Mars that it kind of becomes partial, not a dystopia per se, but kind of like just very stagnant economics that I think maybe hit hard, maybe hit a little bit closer to home for some American viewers who may be watching the shows in areas where they have economic difficulties and there's trouble finding a job in some sorts. And, you've got kids who are volunteering to go through this dangerous medical process just for the chance to make a little bit more money to save their families, which can – families also seems to be a pretty important theme here as well. Maybe not as stressed as it was in the first season, but it's still kind of there. It's like, what would you do for family kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But I kind of felt like there was a little bit more in the background as far as the economic status of Mars and what that does to the people there. Because even in the first episode, they're still hiring relatively, young teenagers to work there at Tekkadan.
Oh, yeah.
So
before going into just that, I did want to bring up a little interesting point that you and I were talking about before we started recording. And that was, Iron Blood Orphans first came out in 2015, and the latest season premiered, I believe, in 2017, as we were making our original review. And let's see, it first premiered, just bringing up the dates right here.
Second season aired on October 2nd, 2016.
Ah, okay. And ended on April 2nd, 2017. So, correction, we were pretty much like halfway through season 2 as we were reviewing season 1. So, we're pretty much we're a little over 2 years after the conclusion of Iron-Blooded Orphans, which wrapped up at 50 episodes. 2 seasons, 50 episodes total. And we haven't really gotten a new mainstream televised Gundam series since then. We have definitely gotten a fair share of Gundam properties, mostly we got Gundam Build Divers in 2018. We had a Gundam Narrative again last year. We had I believe we had, Gundam Thunderbolt Season 2. But these are either movies or OVAs or ONAs or side prod. The whole Gundam Builds franchise has sort of become a new subset of the Gundam franchise, a sub franchise similar to the SD Gundam, which I'm surprised. I just realized that SD Gundam has almost disappeared completely and has been replaced by Build Divers.
Doesn't really surprise me because I don't think SD went over the SD Gundams went over very well, because I do remember them showing up on Cartoon Network, but in a really awkward time slot on early Sundays is what I remember.
Let's see. Oh, and I guess we also had the Gundam Origins films, which detailed Char's complete origin. And I guess we're gonna get an adaptation of Hathaway's Flash. So it looks like film-wise, they're really focusing on the Universal Century, and television-wise or streaming-wise, it's been mostly focused on the Build Fighters Divers sub-franchise. So it's a rather peculiar time to be a Gundam fan when the last real TV show that wasn't related to Gunpla was ended 2 years ago.
Just a little bit, but kind of like we were talking about, I think just this kind of war drama might be getting to the point where we're getting fatigue from it. We're getting diminishing returns on the effectiveness of it, because I know for Japan, at least in their history, especially with things like Godzilla or these giant monster disaster flicks and these super robot stuff, considering the time of an atomic bomb, this is kind of cathartic in a way. Working out what happened through these other medias and such. Godzilla was a big example of catharsis for Japan back in 1954, because of course that's 10 years fresh off of the World War II and what happened. But I think at this point, maybe the audience is getting a little bit more fatigued with the idea of constant war, because the world at large pretty much has been in a war, has been in a constant state of some kind of warfare for the last 12 years, or in for cases for some of our Americans, might be hitting a little bit close to home, for the last 18 years
Mm-hmm.
since 9/11 and the invasion of Afghanistan. So I think series like Build Fighters is kind of a bit of a lighthearted return to
Like escapist fantasy.
Escapist fantasy for a bit here, because you've got stuff like Gundam Build Fighters with the sci-fi elements that allow the Gunpla to come to life, and then Build Fighters Trying, which you kind of bring back that esqueness of what G Gundam was and what made G Gundam really fun and over the top, and you bring that back to the foray.
How do these new Gundam powers work? Fuck you. That's why.
Fuck you. That's why. Because of the Pavlovsky particles, that's why.
But how does that explain that you can make up new powers whenever you want? And how
Gundam.
But how can you create your fingers create such delicate, tiny little new parts and drones and stuff? Because fuck you, that's why.
Because Gundam.
Apologies for the siren going on in the background, folks.
Oh no, Godzilla's attacking.
Dun 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 dun.
But I think the escapist fantasy is kind of a direction, because we also know Bandai makes most of its money off of model sales, Gunpla sales. Right. So having that other dynamic of having all these other different models to play with, to put together to help build that part of the company, the Build Fighter series is pretty much a good example of how that works, even though some of the Gundam models Gundam designs are kind of Because I'll be perfectly honest, there are very few Gundam models from the Build Fighter series which you could have all of these really cool, interesting designs that actually grab me as I want that. I want to have that on my shelf.
Sadly, no love for the badass version of Tequila Gundam.
No love for Tequila Gundam.
In fact, I don't think the regular Tequila Gundam ever got a gunpla, but I could be wrong.
I don't think it did. I've been I've been digging through Amazon listings and finding nothing, hardly anything. But I kind of think that
you want to get that from me specifically, don't you?
No, not Tequila Gundam. No one deserves Tequila Gundam. If it was Tequila, if I did get you Tequila Gundam, I would paint it with a big red circle in the middle of it, and the rest of it white.
What is that supposed to? Oh, because Japan. I live in Japan.
Yes. But being serious here, I think that because the Gundam models in Build Fighters and Build Divers are very kind of feel generic to me. Like I'm not excited about the models. I barely know what any of them look like. But as Build Fighters Try with the Build Burning and the Victory Gundam, their designs are so unique. They instantly grab me as this is cool. This design is pretty awesome. I want this model now on my shelf.
I do remember the asymmetrical wing Gundam from the first season.
Yes, that was Gundam. It was Gundam
Phoenix. Yeah.
Phoenix. It had two different models, and that was cool. Like, that one still sticks out in my mind as something really cool that I would want to have.
I also remember, what was it, Gundam X Mao?
Yeah, it was like some kind of version of the Crossbones Gundam or something. No,
X Gundam.
X Gundam, that's right. No, Crossbones was in Build Fighters Try.
Okay.
So, like I said, some of the models from the Build Fighter series, a series that you should have a lot of the most creative design elements ever, considering how big Gunpla is in Japan and how big modding is. And I've seen some really cool Gundam concepts come through. You don't see that in the show very often, if at all.
Let's not forget Gundam, what was it? Tryon 3.
Yes, Tryon 3.
A fucking super robot translated into a Gunpla.
And it was super robot Gundam Force.
I love it. Like in the show, everyone's like, what the fuck is this? This isn't Gundam!
And then you have like the main character Sekai goes, "That was awesome!" Like my spirit animal right there.
But we're not talking about Gunpla, nor are we talking about Build Fighters or Build Divers, whatever of that bullshit.
We're talking about later if you let me.
We're here to talk about war and death and everything that comes with it.
And reaching too far with the power you think you have, but not the power that you need.
It's about trying so far and only getting so far, because in the end, it doesn't even matter. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so
in the end, an AI kicks. In the end, a brain ninja kicks your ass.
That is true. That's true. We will get into spoilers as we're talking about the show itself, so because we're already 2 years separated from the end of Iron-Blooded Orphans, so get ready.
If you're watching the review and you haven't seen the show, that's on you, because we're going to spoil the hell out of it.
Yes, but we'll go into it, one bees at a time. So, going into Iron-Blooded Orphans, the last alternate universe Gundam series for now, televised show for now, not counting films and build stuff. We start off roughly a year or two after the events of season 1, with Tekadon being a relatively successful, paramilitary company, providing their services and protection, and pretty much kind of like mercenaries, essentially, to make a living. Meanwhile, they're also trying to set up a farm to try to trying to start a new legit, lifestyle where free of violence, but unfortunately they can't really survive off of their farm, and it's still not enough money to support themselves and leave the life of a mercenary. So this entire season is focused mostly on Tekadon, the group of child soldiers, essentially trying their best to escape this life by taking the fastest, most blunt route possible, as they're led by their leader Orga and his partner in crime Mikazuki. And so we're also, through their goal of trying to leave this life of violence, they end up getting more than they could bargain for, as they end up being partnering up with McGillis, who is an individual who is the one of the major leaders of Galorhorn, this universe's version of like the Earth Federation. And in the time between season 1 and season 2, Galorhorn, their main protagonist, is sort of like dealing with its own problems, its own little political discourse between McGillis and a new character by the name of Rustal Elion, as they're trying to struggle for control of Galorhorn and the future of Earth, as kind of like they both have very different ideas as to how to run Galorhorn, and McGillis helping out Tekadon in season 1 now requires their help in return, and that leads to more problems down the road. And one of the biggest things I took away from season 2 of IBO is that, unlike season 1 had like a very straightforward narrative, where it was essentially one big glorified, what was the word that I used?
One big glorified escort mission.
Yes, exactly, an escort mission. They take Kudelia, who's still in this season, providing moral and financial support to Tekadon, as well as starting a school for children to help them help educate them, to lead them away from the life that Tekadon unfortunately has. They take Kudelia from Mars to Earth and battle everyone who tries to stop them. Here, it's much different, where I feel like it's, rather than one narrative, it feels like multiple mini arcs that are somewhat tangentially connected to each other until the very end. For instance, I kind of divide this into like five story arcs. From episodes 1 through episode 4 of season 2, we have what I call the Dawn Horizon Corps arc, where they have to deal with these pirates who were hired by a rival company of Kudelia's to try to wipe out both her and Tekadon. From episodes 5 and 8, we have the Earth SAU battle, which was the Earth portion of Tekadon being caught in the middle, being manipulated into a war that's trying to wipe out both McGillis and the Earth branch of Tekadon. From episodes 9 to 13, we have what I call the Mobile Armor arc, where a giant Terminator-esque robot monster is awakened hundreds of years after what they call the Calamity War, and the characters on both sides trying to take it down. Episode 14 through 17, we have what I call the Jazzly arc, where one of the people from the sort of space mafia that Tekadon works for, a rival of theirs, tries to take them out, and so as a result, Tekadon strikes back in return, and as a result, severing all their ties with the mafia that they were under. And finally, episodes 17 through 25, we have what I call the Fugitive arc, where once they take care of Jasley, they're like mafioso rivals. They now have to deal with the consequences of working with McGillis, as McGillis is kind of uprooted and loses control of Gallarhorn, and as a result, Russell Elion and takes control of Gallarhorn fully and uses it to wipe out both Tekkadan and McGillis, with our characters practically fighting for their lives.
The one thing, because you said it seems like this is more more tangential stories. I think the reason it feels like that is because I was considering this before the review here. I was kind of thinking over like some things we're going to talk about, and I was thinking the problem I think most people might have with IBO is it doesn't seem like the characters are the stars of the story. They're supporting characters for someone else's machinations, and it almost seems like they're reacting too much to that instead of being proactive in what they do here. Mm-hmm. And that's why we get, because there's so much more political maneuvering in this compared to the previous season. Because the previous season, any of the political machinations were there, but they were so limited that they didn't detract away from the entire story. Whereas in this season, it's all
reactionary.
McGillis. It's all reactionary. It's all McGillis pulling the strings and being the manipulator to Tekkadan to the point where it gets everyone killed pretty much.
Okay, kind of true. Like, again, you got the Dawn Horizon Corps, which attacked first. You have the SAU, which was manipulated by one of Rustel's most trusted allies. You had the Mobile Armor arc, again, out of their control. Jasley, out of their control, and the fugitive stuff. Like, I guess the fugitive stuff.
But the thing is, I don't think it was all other. It wasn't as disassociated as that, because I think except for the first 3 episodes with the Dawn Horizon, that it was all due to this political back and forth for control of Gallarhorn between Russell and McGillis. Because let's face it, worst character, Iok, becomes the driving force of 3 of those arcs of what sets shit off. And that's part of the problem, because after because we got the Dawn Horizon arc, and then afterwards it's kind of when we go from that, then we kind of get into where the major political powers are starting to play each other, where Russell has the bearded man versus the Tekkadan soldiers being manipulated again by an adult, which kind of drives home the fact that these are still kids. Yeah. They're still child soldiers and child militants. And even then, it's turning them into where they're chess pieces, which kind of diminishes, I think, the actual emotional connection, which I think is why maybe a lot of people didn't like season 2 as much, because of that, it made it seem like Tekkadan was nothing more than a chess piece being used by these different political powers between usually by Gallarhorn interfering with their politics and their connections, because that's what happened with the Julius arc. That's what happened with the Mobile Armor. That's what happened with like the final 6 episodes. Pretty much was the accumulation of all that, and that's what happened with the not the SAO arc, the second
the Earth Battle arc, right?
The Earth Battle arc, right? So all of those are due to Gallarhorn political shenanigans. And I think that pulled away from the focus being on Tekkadan to try, and then they kind of introduced the aspect of them trying to take control of their own destiny, but just showing that they're powerless in the front of all these other forces that are again way beyond their control.
I think that's supposed to kind of represent the idea of this being a tragedy for the child soldiers of Tekkadan. Well, that's a slight tangent here. It's pronounced Tekkadan because it's like the end. It ends with D-A-N, Don, and yet the English dub always pronounces it as Tekkadan, like skipping over the A entirely or treating the A like an E. I'm just sorry. It just kind of bothered me a little bit. I understand this is it is an English language and we speak English, we pronounce things differently, but it's always kind of strange that they pronounce Tekkadan as Tekkadan. I know. It's completely pointless, but I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Well, if anything about your channel here, Andres, this is the least pointless thing there.
Probably.
You walked right into that one.
At least we're actually talking about the series instead of talking about our history with Gundam for 30 minutes.
40 minutes and no IBO.
That's the way Team KaijuNoir rolls.
Oh, it's so true. So yeah, I think that because there's so much, we're showing so much more of the politicking-ness, that it seems to take it away from being Tekken's story of them. Because starting after the first 3 episodes, everything is reactionary. Like they're not being proactive in their choices, which, if you know anything from writing good characters, is you don't want your characters to be reactive. They need to be active.
Proactive.
And I think, proactive, because if they're too reactionary, then why are they the focus? Because that's what makes me feel like season 2 is more about McGillis. True,
yeah. And I feel like, for me, the reason why I still highly enjoyed season 2 and I enjoyed following the soldiers of Tekkadan is because I still feel like the characters themselves are highly engaging to watch. Where it's like, rewatching season 2 made me remember why I loved IBO so much in general. I still enjoy the chemistry between all of the Tekkadan members. I enjoy the strong familial bonds they all share. I enjoy like the wide we get to they don't get to make so many choices as they attempt to control their destiny. I love how we get to explore the story from other characters' perspectives around Tekkadan and around the different factions of this story. And it's probably like the thing where it's like, sure, the members of Tekkadan are not able to fully control their destiny, but seeing them at least try to, and in the end sort of succeeding in a way, though not the way that they originally planned to, kind of makes their journey worthwhile, where it's like, we saw the rise of Tekkadan, and as a result of their own like brashness and unwillingness to bow down to anyone. And we see the fall of Tekkadan due to their that same sense of overambitiousness also led to the fall of Tekkadan as a result. Because at the end of the day, like you said, they're kids. I guess they were easier to manipulate, but I still don't think that makes them bad characters per se. It just makes them tragic ones. And it's like, it is sad to see them be put in a situation beyond their control. But I guess it's like seeing these characters raised in such a horrific setting, attempt to survive all of this and struggling. It's like through their major struggles, I guess they thought that by taking power away from them would make their struggle even more intense for the audience. Maybe that was what the writer was thinking.
It's possible here, but I think that may be why people may have been turned off from this. They may think it may have felt rushed, is because I think that they decided to make the focus less on Tekken and establishing themselves, because after season 1, they're established as this paramilitary organization that still has their own goals, but they're not the focus. They're a key piece in the grander political spectrum because they beat back Galahorn. That's a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's the reason why Galahorn, for the most part, has tried to stay away from them, directly combating them up until the very end.
Until we find out, until we get to the whole final skirmish part of it. But
right.
Overall, I think this season was really good. May not be as good as season 1. I can see where some people get that, but it definitely has its moments that are wham moments, and even and I believe there's a term that some of the fans use called it's death flag moments. Where this happens in anime all the time, so it's not just IBO, but a lot of people recognize it with IBO because it's very obvious. Is someone's going to die when you get a lot of backstory on them for no reason whatsoever.
Or it's like, I'm feeling really happy right now. Boy, am I living a great life. I can't wait to continue this.
My baby's going to be born any day now.
This is going to be my last battle. Afterwards, I'm going to party all I want.
Which, unironically, is some of the lines that go on in the last 6 episodes.
Tragically, yeah. And I would say, like, it's season 2, despite its, like, more fractured narrative, it still paced relatively the same as season 1, where you get these major battles, and then you get long periods of recuperating from said battles in between. Like, for every 2 action-packed episodes, you'll get, like, 2, like, downtime episodes that focuses solely on the characters and their interpersonal relationships with one another, as they decide, their relationships with each other help motivate them to make the next decision, and set the course forward to the next, skirmish.
And even then, I think one of the last things said about Tekkadan is, I think the most insightful about, I think, what the writer may have actually tried to go with is that Gjallarhorn was afraid of Tekkadan not because of how strong they were as humans, but because they were human debris, because they were basically children slaves, children soldiers who didn't know how to live. They were like, usually when you go on a battlefield, you fight for a cause or some kind of devotion or some kind of drive that drives you to go out there and risk your life for something. What made Tekkadan scary for Gjallarhorn was because these children went on the battlefield to feel human. Because they had all their lives, they're just made for battle and made for comment, and they're used as weapons, they're used as tools. The only time they feel human is when they're actually fulfilling that role, which I thought was actually hits home the entire point of all of IBO. Season 2 in particular hits home really hard, especially in the last couple of episodes when everything goes to hell. Right.
And they realize it's like, the whole idea is like, especially between Mikazuki and Orga, is that Mikazuki is following Orga to the place that he promises to take them. And even Orga himself does not know where their journey will take them, but by the end, he realizes that as long as they are together as a family, that place that they're going towards is there. So in a way, it's kind of sad, but also uplifting, where it's like they want to escape the life of a child soldier, but at the end of the day, being a child soldier is all they know how to do. So that's the only enjoyment they get out of life, because they're still together as a family. So like, they live together, they die together. That's how they feel the most. That's when they feel the most human. Again, I think that is the key point of IBO season 2. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this, especially as far as the characters are concerned. Yeah. And it's kind of, perhaps it's an interesting relationship or interesting dichotomy between Tekkadan and Gjallarhorn, where Gjallarhorn, they try to maintain the peace, whereas Tekkadan can only survive through war, and which ultimately clashes with what Gjallarhorn is supposedly meant to represent.
And the other thing is that, because they showed a bit of this in season 1, where you have, like, there are members of Gjallarhorn who still view themselves as knights keeping the peace, and there's all this pageantry that goes along with it, and all the ceremony,
corruption, and all that stuff.
No, not the corruption. I'm not talking about the corruption.
Or you mean like the hoity-toity stuff?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm talking the chivalry and the prestige, and again the pageantry, because there is, for some people, the order of how you go through being a knight. Like, what's her name? The woman with I want to say Claire, but that's not it. The woman,
Rustel's main. Oh, Julieta, Rustel's main No,
I'm not talking Julieta. No. I am talking from season 1.
Oh, like the woman from the book that Kudelia used to read about.
No, I'm talking about, God dang, I can't remember her name for the life of me. She was the one that she looked like a fox to me for some reason, because the tips of her hair were black and the rest of her hair was this kind of white, light blue color. And she believed.
You mean like the person who was sort of like, I forgot her name, but she was the one who died for McGillis, but she was just another pawn for McGillis.
Right, she was a pawn for McGillis, died for McGillis, but she and her subordinates believed in, their ceremony.
Fareed, I think. No, that was probably not her.
But
I'll take a look at it while you're talking.
But the thing is, she's the one that killed Biscuit, and that set off everyone in Tekkadan. But when she's trying to do a fight by combat, or not even a trial by combat, but honor by combat, challenging the strongest member of Tekkadan, Mikazuki rushes in, kills a couple of her guards that aren't even in the mobile suits, goes for the cockpit, kills them, and then proceeds to crush her.
Right.
Because she believed in the ceremony part of it, the righteousness part of it. She gets killed because she killed Biscuit, and that's all Mikazuki's thinking of. Colonel
Carta issue.
Carta. Yeah, Claire was close. It was not right though. It was close. Carta. So Carta dies, even though she believed in the righteousness and it's the pageantry in the I don't want to call it hoity-toity. It's the actual the ceremony,
right?
And
or
all of that.
She kind of believes in this sort of like fake chivalrousness that what was it? Galio also believed in.
Because I think she believed in the righteousness of Gjallarhorn, just like Galio does. But even Galio can also admit that there's some stuff that Gjallarhorn does that is not just.
Right. But it's interesting that like Carta could have been the same type of person that Galio could have become had he not been so close to McGillis.
Right, and honestly, I kind of find it funny because in the long run, McGillis' entire thing is to fight against the corruption of what Gjallarhorn had become in the 300 years since the Calamity War, and he's fighting that. And he's fighting against that. And he wants to fight that, but he's going through all these political machinations. And the really tragic thing for him is that Carta and Galio would have been great allies for that.
Right, but that's another huge contrast going between McGillis and Tekkadan themselves, where McGillis, he's willing to abandon anyone and he's willing to step on anyone and everyone to get what he wants, with only the slightest amount of respect for Tekkadan, because he sees them as like a kindred spirit due to his own upbringing, which I do want to bring up when we talk about him, but damn is it dark.
No, it's dark. But
it's like he does not believe in like being dedicated to his followers or like dying for his followers. He believes like the opposite is true. So he tries to get Orga to join him on his hopeless cause. He tries to persuade Mikazuki to join his cause, but it's ultimately to no avail because they're willing to stick with each other, not with him. And because, it's like by the end of the series, he is all alone in this.
And the other thing that you bring that up is because Tekkadan resembles family, and I think McGillis is going to represent more of the struggle of power of one versus the power of all. Because Tekkadan, even though we have several major deaths throughout the entire series and how that affects everyone, Tekkadan as a whole survives.
True, the spirit of Tekkadan lives on. Right.
And I think McGillis understands Mikazuki right before the final battle when he's trying to get him to join him on the front lines against the blockade that Gjallarhorn has around the Tekkadan base. And what happens there is that he tries to get Mikazuki to go with him. Orga hasn't given him orders to go yet.
Right.
And McGillis comments about it's so strange. It's sad. You have no cause, no compulsion, no drive to do what you do. I don't know which is sadder. I'm paraphrasing really badly here, but I think that also, because if anything is more tragic, McGillis is very much the tragic hero of his own story.
Right.
And Tekkadan is the tragic consequence of his actions.
And in a way, it's almost like every character is like the protagonist of their own show.
And that's exactly right, because you're the hero, you're the star of your own story. But I feel like if this is so much more of a Greek tragedy, because you were mentioning that the Tekkadan is like Icarus because Orga was trying to reach for his aspirations. Here's the thing. Fall
hard real badly. I mean, I didn't establish this in the review itself, but days before recording, I did mention that. And when I watched season 2 of IBO, I'm constantly reminded of the Greek tragedy of Icarus, the story of the boy who flew too close to the sun and was punished as a result, and by losing his life in the process.
For those not familiar with Icarus, his father made himself and his son a pair of wax wings to fly away from the island of Sicily, if I remember correctly. To
escape their prison.
Escape their prison. However, the father's name, I want to call him Deuterus, but I think that's wrong, told his son, do not fly too high, otherwise the wings will melt. Icarus sees how high he can fly, his wings melt, and he falls to his death. However, I don't think Tekkadan is the IBO season 2 is a tragedy. It is a complete and utter tragedy for all parties involved. Even Galorhorn, it's a tragedy on their side, but they recover. Their fall from grace is a little bit more graceful. The Icarus in this is not Tekkadan, it's McGillis. The entire time, McGillis has the aspiration to lead Galorhorn, to control Galorhorn, and he's going through all of these emotions.
Right.
He has the Alenia Vignana system put into him. Right. Thanks to the research done in season 1 on Ein, which Ein is the most tragic character at all. Then you have then Ein comes back, and then he does all that research so he can have the system put in him, so he can control the Gundam Bael. Right. Or Bael. It's a B-E-A-L. No, B-A-E-L.
Yeah. It's also very interesting how, he had to step on so many lives. He had to sacrifice so many lives in order to get to that place of power where he's at currently. And yet all of that comes to bite him in the ass big time by the second half of the series. And it's like, later in the series, it's revealed that his former friend / murder victim, Galio, he is still alive, and he outs McGillis for the crimes that he has committed against him, against his family, against Carta's family, against his own family. He's revealed all his, treachery. Because, even in this first season, despite being an ally of Tekkadan, personally, for me, I felt very uneasy around him. It's like, should I be rooting for this guy? And it's like, his goals are very admirable, but the way he goes about it is the complete opposite. And so all of that does come back to haunt him. And the thing is, he was aware previously that Galio is still alive, but he did nothing. He showed no fear. He had this confidence that's saying oh, it doesn't matter if you expose me. It's I know what I'm doing. And of course, things don't turn out the way he wanted it to be.
Okay, you mentioned Galio coming back here, and the first thing that pops in my mind is aha, you thought it was me, brand new character, but it was I, Galio!
Kono Galio da!
So here's the thing with that introduction. It took 5 seconds of Galio being on screen behind the mask for me to know it was Galio. Right. It did not take me very long. It's new character. This is a sea of new characters, and it's Galio, isn't it? It's Galio. Is it Galio? It's Galio.
It's in season 1. He was the Garma of IBO. Now he has become. He went from being the Garma to the new Char.
Here's the weird thing, though. Here's the weird thing. Galio himself never faces Tekkadan in season 2. He doesn't face off against Barbados.
No. Oh yeah, you're right. Oh no. He does fight. He does briefly fight. What was it? Barbatos Lupus Rex for a short bit after he reveals himself.
But his main concern always seems to be McGillis.
Right. He doesn't come out to fight. He doesn't come out to specifically fight Tekkadan in the least, because at the very end of the show, it's revealed that he actually sympathized with Tekkadan all along.
Yeah, and that's just the thing. If the thing that's more tragic about this is again, McGillis is the central tragic character of season 2, which makes everything about this feel like it's not about the Tekkadan group anymore. It's more about McGillis's fall and his continued internal corruption, because he's becoming fanatical at this point.
Oh, yeah. He definitely wants to control Galorhorn and control the Earth Union and the space colonies, kind of like some sort of omnipotent dictator sort of individual. Rustle points out to McGillis that he thirsts for power and nothing more. That's all he's become obsessed with over time. And that's why from the very get-go, he has always had this mistrust of McGillis.
And has even been orchestrating stuff to get McGillis to do things. Or at least to act in a certain way, or to draw out his hand in this very long-standing poker game of politics that I hate.
Right.
And I looked it up. It is Bael.
Okay.
It is pronounced Bael, B-A-Y-L.
Okay.
It's sometimes spelled Baal. I should know my demons. Come on.
I'm sure you've drawn a few over the years.
I may have. You'll never know. But okay, so since that is one thing, let's bring that up here because I think that kind of has to do with the theme.
Mm-hmm.
Has to do with theme of. I think it has to do with theme of tragedy and hubris and falling from grace.
Mm-hmm.
The Gundams and the mobile armors are named after angels and demons.
Uh-huh.
In particularly, the Gundams are named after demons
that hunt the angels.
And the thing is, the angels were made first.
Right, and yeah, the mobile armors were named after angels. They were made first, only to be proven to be a threat as opposed to a tool.
And I'm trying to remember because the angel had a name. Because the mobile armor had the name of an angel, I just cannot remember what it is. I want to try and find it. But
okay, I wasn't aware of that because. Did they ever reveal its name? Because I think they just called it the mobile armor or
they just
the
called
bird.
it mobile armor. But here's the thing: it's the little mobile armor workers.
Yeah,
were called a plume, which is Latin for feather.
Oh, okay.
So it has a name. I just have to figure out what it is because it starts with an H, I think. Mobile armor. No, yeah, it is. Okay, Hashmill or Hashmol.
Okay. I'm sure that must have been an Evangelion name at some point.
See, it appears in the Hebrew Bible, Ezekiel 1:4. I saw, and behold, there was a stormy wind coming from the north, a great cloud with flashing fire and a brilliance surrounding it, and from its midst, like the color of the Hashmil, from the midst of the fire, and its mist was a likeness of four chariot. Means amber, also to deal with coined to electricity. Yep, so Hashmel was the ancient modern Hebrew word that translated into the English word electricity, which kind of makes a little bit of sense for that.
To be a robot.
But, yes. Pluma was the name of the little small mobile creature.
Yeah.
Yes. So I love that naming convention, and if you want to put it up here in the review here with the picture I showed you here, as I noticed, and I'll get in a little bit more detail of this, but I noticed like little cross structures in the arms in the elbow units of Barbados while I was building the Gunpla model for him.
Okay. Now
I don't know for certain if that was there as a design aesthetic that was supposed to be there, or if that was there simply to help hold on the upper or forearm armor, because there really wasn't. No, because there were a couple of other pieces that went in there to cover that. So I don't know if that's a design aesthetic or just a Gunpla construction anchor. But all of the Gundams and even all the spin-off material I found when I was looking up more information about the show are named after devils. And the Kings of Hell and the Dukes of Hell. Like Bael is one of the Kings of Hell. And Barbados is a higher Duke of Hell, and so is Gundam Gibson. So there's Baal, yes, Gusion, as well as where was it? There was one named Dantilion. Another one is Florus.
All right, the Ryusei Go Mark IV. Yes.
So these are all like Dukes of Hell. They're demons of this Hell region. It kind of has that dynamic here, which kind of ties into the show as a whole, because demons, at least in a lot of Western mythology and religions, are fallen angels.
And they live for battle?
Depends.
Or they're made to suffer?
I don't know. I don't know if that's the way they were going with it here.
Okay.
But that is kind of the really interesting part about this. I think it's kind of fun to look at. And I kept trying to look for in Gallarhorn, because they have one of the kings of the demons as their
namesake,
almost not namesake, religious symbol almost, because that first Gundam was piloted by the founder of Galorhorn.
It was, looking through my notes here.
The name of the Gundam was Bael.
Yeah. And let's see. Agnika Kairu. Agnika Kairu. That was the name of the original pilot for Gundam Bael.
And that person's what started
Galorhorn.
McGillis. Yeah, he started Galorhorn, but also started McGillis's
fascination or thirst for power.
Aspirations, I'll say.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, again, brings a thematic set home to the effects of the demons on humanity, especially as we found out in the Mobile Armor arc that when you give yourself to the demon, it takes more from you, as what happened to Mikazuki.
Oh, yeah. Right. And I love how tragic that plays out for Mikazuki, where it's like, he did had some aspirations of becoming a farmer when he eventually escapes this life of being a child soldier, but you can always tell that he felt more comfortable, more at home, being in the cockpit of Barbatos and, being on the front lines, protecting everyone's lives. It's like, he's a protector. That's kind of all he knows how to be at this point. And it's like, I know a lot of fans were upset with the direction of his character because they were expecting him to have a character arc where he learns to stop, to not be in their eyes, stop being so subservient to Orga and to find a life of his own and escape the life of a soldier instead of doubling down, which is what he eventually does in the series. But it's like, I think that's a bit unfair because it's like, I get you were kind of, for most people, they would expect a child soldier to eventually find peace and resolution and escape that life, because that's like the more optimistic thing, or like, stop listening to other people, stop being subservient to other people.
Stop being a tool.
But that's the thing, it's like, I guess that was never meant to be his character arc. That was meant to be the other piece. His character arc was to learn the value of the lives around him, so that he may die in their place, so that other people can escape the life of a child soldier. So it's like, yeah, traditionally that is the kind of character arc you would expect for a character like Mikazuki, which I guess was also sort of the story arc for the main character of Double O. But that's just simply not what the writers had in mind for this character. It's like, I don't know. I just think it's kind of strange. I get why people would be upset for how he turned out, but it's like, I find it a bit irrational to say I don't like that his character arc did not go in the way I wanted it to go in.
I have two things to say, and then I'll reflect on Mikazuki's character arc here. The first thing is, we were talking about giving yourself over to the demon and taking more power from him, becoming dependent upon that power. Mm-hmm. And when we were going into the children soldiers only finding their humanity on the battlefield, Mikazuki is a great depiction of that, because as he gave more of himself to Barbatos, he lost control of half of his body. Right, and he's
literally unable to live a normal life outside of Barbatos, and so it's like, he's like, oh great, now I'm so glad I don't have to make this choice anymore. Now I can fully commit to being a soldier to serve Orga's dream and everyone's dream.
And I think that kind of that ties in more to Mikazuki, giving everything for everyone but losing more control over himself until he is eventually consumed by the devil.
Right, and it's like that, but it's sad, it's tragic, of course, which we've mentioned before, but I guess that's the whole theme of, like, sacrifice, that plays a big part throughout this whole series, and even among Gundam itself. Gundam, we've always had characters sacrificing themselves for the sake of saving others, or for the sake of some larger cause.
And for IBO, it hits home more because I find the last two episodes with Mikazuki, or at least the last episodes where Orga is not around, or he's gone. Orga's gone.
Right.
Spoiler alert: Orga dies.
Yeah. And Mika takes command.
And you almost expect him to give a speech of like, I'm not like Orga, but these were Orga's last words to me, and this is how I intend on carrying them out. Mm-hmm. And even then, like towards the end of it, like you can see him talking to himself as if Orga was still there, Because he misses his friend, but he's gotten to the point where he has to make these decisions on his own, and so his decision is to be there, to be that final last stand so that everyone else can go. And you even have a good moment with him and Hush, which is like his little protege.
Right.
That when Hush gets critically wounded, Mika gives him, in his own way, praise.
Right, his approval.
His approval and praise that Hush has been trying to get, because nothing he can do can actually match up to Mikazuki, because Mikazuki has the Vignana system and is such a better mobile suit pilot. So there's tragic in that, but in these last 2 episodes, I really liked what they did with Mika in such a short time.
Right.
Because I felt that his growth in that short amount of time felt real because of everything that we had been experiencing up here since the first episode of season 1.
Right, and I get that there are people who dislike Mika a lot as a main protagonist, although I'd say it's kind of strange to call him the main protagonist, because it feels like more of like an ensemble character piece. And this was a thing that I mentioned earlier before in season 1, where I found Mika to be a very fascinating character, because he's not a very expressive, not a very emotive character, yet I feel like it's his actions that define his character so much more, as opposed to focusing on dialogue and things of that nature. And also, it's like, one of the big things for having such a stoic character is that they don't focus on him a lot, because I feel like the writers were aware that he was a very non-expressive character, so they put a lot of they gave an equal amount of time to the entirety of Tekadon, making the Tekadon family feel like one giant character. As you focus on Orga, you focus on Akihiro, you focus on Shino, you focus Biscuit
Eugene.
Early on.
Yeah, you got Eugene, you got, of course, Cornelia.
Yeah. Right.
You got all these other characters.
You got Pops.
Oh, yeah, the Tawe, or
Tewaz.
Tewaz.
You got the Tewaz guy. What was it? Naze. You got Naze.
You got Naze.
And
you
the
got
turbines. Yeah. You got Mrs. Marabit. You have Aston. You have like so many characters around. You have the new characters. You have Hush, Dane, and Zack. Let's see. But yeah, it's like you have so many characters in like such a wide variety of characters within Tekadon that I feel like this more than makes up for how simple of a character Mika is. So it's like, to call him the main protagonist, I'm kind of unwilling to call him that, even though he kind of technically is if he pilots the main Gundam of the series. But yeah, it's like, I like this approach to having a stoic character by having other characters that are more expressive around him and seeing how he interacts with them.
I think I said this in our last review of season 1, but Mikazuki reminds me a lot of Hiro Yui in his stoicism. Hiro had a lot more character development where you saw him grow in his relationship with people, and Mika grew in a different direction than Hiro did. And I think if for Mika and Tekadon in the world of IBO, Mika's story works really well. It's a sad, tragic ending, but he's a child soldier. All he's known is death. He will die on the battlefield. He's not going to die in a bed. He's going to die a warrior's death. Not by choice, but more by order, which is kind of what happened here.
Right.
But I'll say that here, though, because I kind of feel like it was still Mika's choice in the end, because, Orga's gone. Mika makes the decision to go with it because the last order he had was to go out there, but I think Mika took the order and as his choice to go out there and to give everyone else a chance to survive, which is what happens with the last mobile suit division that goes out.
And I feel like to call Orga and Mikazuki's like French relationship an abusive one, I feel like that's completely missing the point of their relationship entirely, where I feel like it's an equally beneficial relationship, not just like one trying to solely benefit from the other. And the idea is like, you have had Orga struggle with the realization that of potentially losing Mika every time he goes into battle because of his orders. But of course, multiple times Mika has shown him that he has no qualms about that.
Because the thing that I like about it is I don't think it's an abusive relationship, because Mika they've come to this arrangement between the two of them of looking out for each other, to the point where the two of them are kind of the main characters of the cast. The majority of the season of season 1 and their interactions in season 2 are about Orga and Mikazuki. And I think that's where it should be focused a bit more, because Orga does care about his family, because they've never had a family. They've been orphans. And
and the fact that it had to be pointed out to him that because they never grew up with a real family. Like, I remember how Orga was shocked when Naze had to tell him, this is your family, because he never thought about it, because he had abandoned that concept such a long time ago.
And of course, that sticks with Orga. That sticks with Orga throughout all of season 2.
Yeah.
Because he still wants it's his family, and he takes charge of it, and he's there to do everything he can to help them. And especially with Mika, who would probably be, even though they're family, would be the closest thing I think that Orga considers a brother aside from Naze, because Naze is more like the big distant brother.
Right.
For Orga, but Mikazuki is more like you're closer to me. You're the more emotionally close family member I have. You're my closer brother.
Right. It's kind of like,
but it's never said.
Right. And it's kind of like the thing where it's sort of like they don't need words to convey that to each other, because they've been together for so long.
But even when Orga has doubts, Mikazuki has that weird way of getting Orga to brighten Orga up to the point where he can make a decision.
Right. He's his rock. He is his foundation.
Which is interesting, because Orga towards the end of season 2 starts to lose it, because he's trying to figure out, how do I save my family? I don't care what happens to me. How do I save everyone else in this organization? To even where he tries to barter with Russell of Gallarhorn to try and get his team off, but Russell refuses.
Right.
And so he's got to go through every means he can to try and get people out of there. And it's really kind of nerve-wracking the last 4 or 5 episodes.
Right.
Where everything just escalates and escalates, and there's new complications, and it's not a simple answer all the time. And especially with what happens to Orga, that hit really hard for me, because it's like, I knew it was coming, because let's face it, the show's been out for about a year and a half now, and it's like, knew what was going to happen. Right.
And I can tell by the comments in our past review, so many people have shown their grief, have shown themselves mourning and grieving for Tekadon after season 2 ended. Everyone kept typing up, showing, like, paying their respects to Tekadon by leaving comments under my review.
Press F. Press
F. Everybody who's listening, press F for Tekadon.
The irony is that happened in a mobile group game I was actually playing in when the game shut down. And I posted it was literally, I call it my Gundam stripper game. It's called Master of Eternity. Unfortunately, the servers got shut down here earlier in the month, and I went onto the Facebook group that I was a member of, and I just posted a picture of posted a gif of just a bunch of soldiers saluting. I said, "Gentlemen, it's been an honor," and like 90% of the comments were just F. God. But all of that aside, what happens to Orga, what happens to Tekadin, what happens to McGillis is a tragedy of very large proportions. I don't want to say galactic. I don't want to say interstellar. It's a large downfall, and the lesson to be learned, if anything, is that even though greatness comes through perseverance is not the only thing you can rely on.
Right. You need to rely on the people around you. Right.
The people around you. You need to understand how to work with people you may disagree with or may butt heads with for the betterment of everyone else. And even though the spirit of Tekkadan lives on because the family lives on, it's still a tragedy because the group that we've been following for a good 50-some episodes effectively lost. And it's a bit of a downer ending for some things. It's a bittersweet ending, I think. Yeah. And I think that's okay.
Right. It felt very appropriate especially for the Gundam franchise.
For a Gundam franchise, a downer ending should be expected about 50% of the time.
Yeah.
Granted, I just got done with Gundam Build Fighters Try, so this is a complete whiplash for me. But I think this is okay. I think this is an okay ending.
Right.
I mean,
it's
spirit.
I feel like it's a very beautifully bittersweet ending.
And in an ironic way, what McGillis tried to do to reform Galahorn still happened.
Rust will end up having... It's funny, looking at Rustle, you'd think he'd be, like, following the series, not knowing what's going to happen. You'd think he'd be the bad guy, because he's pulling off all these twisted schemes, hiding, like, trying to fight from behind, trying to be a puppeteer mastermind. He is designed to look like a villain you want to beat the shit out of.
He is this series Palpatine. Go figure.
Yeah, but it's like... I was taken aback for a bit, because, like, we never really knew what his endgame was, because we never spend that much time with him. We only really got to know Rustle through the perspective of Julieta. But,
and even in some of his other subordinates, but...
he ends up being a nice guy at the end.
I wouldn't say he's a nice guy, but I would say that he is a person who is... Oh, what's a good way to put it? Because his political maneuvering was really strong,
right?
And there's even rumors that at the very end, Kudelia becomes the head chairwoman or the head chairman of the Mars Union.
Right, she's kind of like essentially the president of Mars.
Go job. Second best girl gets it. But and it's discussed whether or not it was the elections were manipulated to get her to that position. To either make her a bigger bargaining chip, but I think from what I've been able to tell of Russell, whether or not that is true, he doesn't particularly care. In a way, McGillis's actions to bring about the change within Galahorn, the cleansing of Galahorn, as he put it a lot, came through after his death. He wasn't going to lead it in a way. He was the one that initiated it, but he wasn't the one to claim it.
I see, yeah.
So I think that's kind of an interesting way of ending it for a series, because now groups like Tekkadan, these paramilitary organizations,
don't have to exist any longer.
I don't know if they won't have to exist any longer, but they will not be recruiting children or slaves.
And no longer the Alea Vignana system.
Right, that supposedly has been outlawed as well. Because again, stuff that McGillis did in the end of season 1 that went into season 2, such as the Vignana system, is being recognized as being taken down.
You could mention the same thing also, like while Tekkadan is remembered for being a villain in the eyes of the media, the changes Tekkadan made are forever remembered by Galahorn themselves and the surviving members of Tekkadan, because of Tekkadan's actions, they wiped out a few major members of the 7 stars, the 7 leaders of Galahorn, and because of their lack of leaders, that's when Rustle took advantage and turned it into a democracy.
And in that and here's the thing is that the Mars history books from now on in this new century, in this new universe, will remember Tekkadan as the villains, but whose actions initiated the change that Mars needed to thrive.
Right. Again, very bittersweet. They got what they wanted, but at a heavy cost.
And you can kind of look at the pictures of Mars afterwards, in the years after they did all of this, after all this happened. The cities of Mars don't look run down. They don't look small. They look big and expansive. They've grown. They've prospered. And this prosperity, again, brought on by Tekkadan through McGillis' machinations.
And let's see. Also, going over to Rustle, I kind of noticed a bit of a parallel between his relationship with Julieta and Orga's relationship with Mikazuki, where Mika is like this diehard, dedicated soldier willing to follow any of Orga's orders. And I kind of see a lot of that with Julieta and Rustle, and Julieta learning from Mikazuki the meaning of being such a dedicated soldier, and how, in a way, like I mentioned before, everyone's like the protagonist of their own story. And with Julieta, she's given opportunities to become like Mikazuki in terms of being, sacrificing her humanity, the chance at a normal life in order to become more machine than man. And she rejects those opportunities while also gaining the wisdom from Galio as well as Rustle in terms of trying to be a good enough soldier. And in the end, she ends up besting the rival that she had such a hard time stacking up, trying to go up against throughout the season.
Okay, I have a couple of things I want to disagree with you on that, because the parallels between them are there, but here's the thing.
Sure.
Julieta, I feel, because Mikazuki, I think, treats Orga more like a superior officer whose orders are to be obeyed.
Uh-huh. Since
his interactions and reactions to everyone are so flat and blunt, I think that's kind of how their relationship is. It's not really, that abusive relationship, but it's also Mikazuki's trying to understand a concept that is alien to him because of his life on the street so far. Yeah. Julieta, on the other hand, reveres Russell as a father figure, or
right. So it's different in that case.
It's a much different.
The dynamic is different.
The dynamic is strictly different. Now, there are those parallels to where she can become like Mikazuki in order to match him power for power, and the only way she can beat him is after an orbital bombardment heavily damages Barbados and Gusen.
So she went in handicapped. Or rather, he went in. He needed to be handicapped in order for her to beat him.
Exactly. She needed something to take him down to about 30% power.
Oh wait! But remember what this is all about: relying on other people, not by doing things yourself. Huh?
Hate that you're right. But here's the other thing: is that even at 30% power, when Mikazuki goes full beast mode in Barbados, he's still taking out mooks left and right.
Right. He went down like a arm. He didn't. People say that characters died and they went out like a bitch. Not at all, my friend. I highly disagree with that.
Allow me to introduce you to the mooks. Everyone else who died that we barely even get a face shot of.
Everyone, especially Mika, went out like a fucking champ.
Oh God, no! You want to talk about going out like a goddamn champ? Naze's main wife went out like a freaking badass, and it's so great. Oh, it makes me so sad. Let's see, Turbines, Amadea Arcia. Oh my God, she was great.
Oh, I'm really glad we. I know we're moving all over the place, but hey, it's Gundam IBO. That's how they roll.
There's so much to talk about in such a series like this.
I was really glad that we got to get a lot of backstory from Naze and her before we get to see their untimely deaths. Oh, and by the way, when she died, it seemed like they were hinting at the idea that new type ghosts also exist in this continuity. I
didn't catch that. But I wasn't looking for that.
You saw her spirit like embracing Naze before he dies.
Yeah,
I understand.
But again,
it could
I've
be
seen
just
that happen in a lot of other anime that doesn't have ghosts, but it just might also be like the spiritual aspect of stuff. But I don't care. That's fine. I'm okay with this.
I love it.
They went out awesomely, and the best line from Amida, because during this confrontation, Iok, who I hate with a burning fucking passion because he is dumbest character.
Yeah, he's supposed to. I think he's meant to represent like the old ways, the old hoity-toity ways of Gjallarhorn.
I don't think he is. I think he's supposed to be to represent the people who have grown up with this illusion of power. That because they have followers and they have all these responsibilities, they are entitled to what they they had without earning it.
Right. They were born into it, and so they feel they are superior to them. Meanwhile, Rustle is not like that. After all, he had Julieta, who he selected. She was of a much lower class, and yet that did not affect Rustle's choice in choosing her to be his right-hand soldier.
But with Iok, the very few redeeming qualities he has is his devotion to his men and wanting to avenge them and make them proud for supporting him. And I've seen this character a couple of other times, and I just get really sick and tired of it because their position of power and their followers or their subordinates
he carries himself with more. Yeah, he carries himself with more self-importance. Like, I have to be the one to reclaim the honor of my fallen men.
Right, and they put so much importance on that, and they put him into an echo chamber.
Yeah,
where I see characters like this and I hate them, especially Iok, because all of his decisions are dumb because no one actually wants to sit him down and tell him, you are a terrible leader. You have led to the death of all your men. You have fucked up everything else for everyone around you. You are on a vengeance spree with no idea on how to control it. And you are so wrapped up in your own
ego
perception of your own, not maybe ego, of your own power and your own self-assuredness that you nearly get more of your men killed when they almost fire when you almost get your bridge on your flagship shot off. Dude should have died 2 episodes in after being introduced. It pisses me off every time I see him. It's like, why are you here? Go away.
He's a character who's meant to be hated.
No, because there are characters you love to hate. I love the Joker. I hate the Joker. I love to hate the Joker. This guy, I just hated. Every moment he is on screen, every line of dialogue was just someone punch this asshole. The only problem with his death because he gets killed because Iok's fleet is who eventually kills Naze and ends up with the deaths of hundreds of the turbines, the children and stuff. His actions
and the death of Lafter.
And the death of no, he wasn't the one responsible for that.
No, remember that's the reason why Akihito went crazy and sought out to kill him in his last.
It wasn't Lafter. He was the one that killed Naze and them because they heard the radio transmissions. Lafter was killed by Julius's men.
Okay, but wasn't Julius able to kill them because of Iok?
No, the only way they did that was because Julius helped Iok frame the turbines for holding an illegal weapon.
Okay.
Iok went after the turbines. The turbines tried to surrender, which Iok also ignored the surrender flags, or the surrender warning shots. Went through and tried to and killed Naze and Amadea, and also used the railgun weapon on some of the retreating ships.
Yeah,
because they were retreating. No. Lafter was killed by Julius's men so he could try and manipulate the old man, the leader of Tewaz, into getting those women under some of his protection, so he could kind of revert them back from so he can kind of turn them back into what Naze had rescued them from in the human trafficking and stuff like that. Because we can't assure the protection of these women. They're too vulnerable. And that's what led to that. Now, Akihiro heard Iok's transmission when Naze and his wife were killed.
Okay.
That's what brought him back towards the end. It was like, you're the one that killed them. I'm going to enjoy crushing you. And his death is honestly not as satisfying as I wanted it to be for how much I absolutely hated his character. For how much I fucking hated him. Because there are characters who deserve death, and there are characters whose actions we want to see them pay for. Iok was a character since moment 1. I knew he was going to be a character who was going to have a bad end, and I disliked. I didn't want to dislike him. I didn't enjoy disliking him. I just hated him the moment his smug face showed up on screen. Even when he didn't speak, I wanted to punch his smug little face.
Well, that's the thing for me. It's like, yes, he was a smug idiot. And that's why it's like, I was like, I can't wait for Tekadon to eventually, wipe the smirk off his face permanently. And that's why I found his death to be enjoyable in the end. See, so it's like, I did not grow up, resent him as much as you did. I just okay, I'm going to enjoy your death when it's eventually going to come.
Which the death came about 25 episodes too late, I think.
That's the thing.
Because honestly, if he was gone, that would have avoided so much more misery in this entire goddamn
Personally, he didn't annoy me that much. If anything, he amused me with his idiocy and how like, you have, like, Julieta constantly undermining him.
Well, it's not really undermining. Well, she's trying to undermine because she's trying to rein him in, and he's not having any of it because this is his moment. It's my moment, damn it. But my problem with him was, like, if you have those moments happen once or twice and the character learns from it, that's one thing. Iok didn't change a goddamn instance. You want to talk about
he's not supposed to, I think.
No, that's a problem, though. You want to bitch about no character development for Mikazuki? Iok had none. Mika had more character development in the last season than Iok. Mika had more character development in the last 2 episodes than Iok did this entire fucking season. You can't tell me, you can't legitimately tell me that you're going to complain about a main character's, you know, the main protagonist's lack of development, that's with air quotes, by the way, and then not mention at all that Iok doesn't change from scene 1 until his death. He doesn't change at all, and that's what makes me so mad. Because this character, every time he ended up, he was basically if he was comic relief, he was terrible at his job.
All right, well, this is just a difference of opinion then. Obviously,
and I'm right and you're wrong.
And obviously, the way I experienced this character was much different than you did. So
it's true, and it's like I said, our experience with the show has been positive so far.
Right.
I hate this character with a pretty passion.
Don't worry, I'm sure that's something that all detractors can, fans
honestly,
and detractors can agree on.
I honestly, because he got crushed by Akihiro, I was so glad that he died. But I was so disappointed because the death wasn't gory enough.
Well,
you would think that
it's a television show. They can't. Have you seen what they've done to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure?
Have you seen what they've done to all the other deaths in this show? Not one drop of blood from Iok. He's crushed. Not a blood splatter to be found. But we got bloody covered cockpits. We've got Mika holding on to the bloody remains of a cockpit in his demonic hands. We've got Shino's blood-wrapped bandages and droplets of blood being sprayed out into space after his Gundam is mangled.
Uh-huh.
And yet, the death of Iok is so unsatisfying for me. He got crushed. Great. Show me some blood. Show him. I want to see him pop like a fucking zit.
Yeah. Now, if you want to talk about, like, painful deaths, it's like, while a lot of characters went out like champs, Shino's death, like, hit me the hardest. Mostly because it's like he was so close to succeeding, man. Fucking close.
That entire thing with him, that was such a great last-ditch moment. And I'm watching it going, oh my god, this looks like it's going to be awesome. Something's going to happen. And he gets taken, and when I was watching this, after watching the episode, I looked down at the comments, and someone's like, "No, Julieta's got the best freaking shot. She won the day with a freaking shot. She's a Mary Sue." I'm like, "Oh no. If she was a Mary Sue, she would have one hit killed him. She didn't. She missed. She hit the gun and forced it off angle. That's not a Mary Sue trait. She still screwed up. The shot still went off. If she was a Mary Sue, she would have punctured the cockpit and killed him instantly. But he went out like a champ. Honestly, the death that hit me the hardest is one of 2. Amelia's, when she dies against Iok's army.
Right.
And Lafter's.
Yeah, it's like I really enjoyed the chemistry that Lafter and Akihiro had, just because I just love, like, those bizarre, like, the bizarre character dynamic you have between the very how would you call it, very emotive, very bubbly persona of Lafter, and the more, like, rigid, more serious-minded character of Akihiro. It's just like it's gonna sound strange, but they make a very adorable couple, I gotta admit.
It's that opposite attract, and I was really
yes, that's the thing I was looking for. Opposites attract, yeah.
Anything with Akihiro and Lafter is great. Like, anything with the two of them talking to each other is great, because Akihiro doesn't know how to respond to her.
Right, because he has no idea.
She's so obviously into him. It's adorable.
I love Shino and Eugene. They're like, oh, you want to hang out? Okay, I'll ask the other guys. And Eugene and Shino are like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
She's asking you. You go out with her.
Why? He's so innocent-minded. It's adorable. It's cute. Adorable.
It's that mentality, because he's been a child soldier for so long. He doesn't. There's this lack of their humanity, and just everything with Akihiro and Lafter was really great for that episode.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we had the death flags pop up multiple times, so something bad's going to happen to someone, and just the way Lafter goes out is just so there's no.
It's also very sad because like she could have gone with Tekadon, but rather she chose to stay with the Turbines. Like I feel like had she stuck around with Tekadon, she might have survived a little bit longer. But it's like
I honestly don't think so, because I think her decision to go with the Turbines made sense in the sense that they just lost Naze and the boss lady. So
right, and she, along with the other, like another member who eventually touchingly wears the similar clothing as Naze by the very end.
Yes.
The two of them, they are essentially like the major major leaders of the Turbines. And
that other woman is Aze Guraman.
Oh, great. And so it's a great. I love their contributions to Tekadon. Obviously, they're from the very get-go, the Turbines have shown to be much more well-experienced soldiers than Tekadon, and have continued to support them, especially with Ozzy and Lafter providing training the rest of Tekadon to keep up to pace with like Mikazuki and Akihiro. And it goes to the idea of like, putting your own ambitions aside for the sake of others, kind of like, we talked about how Tekadon, both Akihiro and Mikazuki, they were, sacrificing their lives so that their family can survive. Lafter gives up her own happiness for the sake of the Turbines. It's idea of, putting your own, what do you call it?
It's altruism.
Yeah, or putting like others before your putting like thinking of others before yourself. It's playing into the theme of like selflessness throughout this show.
And I felt really bad because Lafter, up until all the stuff happened with the Turbines. Mm-hmm. Lafter was going to go talk to Naze about maybe going back and working with Tekadon instead and getting a divorce from him, and finding out his mentality with everything was like, this guy is the ultimate player, but he's not like a dick. Like it's not like he's a pimp. He's not abusing the women. He's not forcing them to do anything, and they all love him. And like, okay, that's a harem king right there. I mean, the guy from high school DxD would be proud.
It's a little strange when he said like, oh, I kind of see Lafter as more of a daughter than I'm willing to let go of. But I guess it's like, it's a very different kind of relationship he has with all the different women. Also, there are a lot of children that he has with them. I wonder if he has a child. I'm assuming he doesn't have a child with Lafter. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so willing to leave.
I think with that entire setup with the Turbines, it's like they're all his wives, and he tries to give them all the attention. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be mothers to his direct offspring, but they're his wives. I mean, they share like motherly duties, like taking care of the kids. But for the most part, like he doesn't force them into that role unless they want it, which I don't know that for a fact, but that's kind of my own thinking about how with the way that Naze has acted in the past.
Oh, by the way, before we move on, I do want to give a big shout out. I'll share the art on screen right now to Garayan's depiction of Lafter. He made a really beautiful like sketch portrait of her.
I think I saw this. Was that on the
I was on the
discussion
Facebook,
we were on?
Yeah, it was on the Facebook post that we were on.
Yes.
Yeah. And for anyone who enjoys giant monster art and anime women art, check out Garayan's DeviantArt, Instagram, and all that Facebook and all that good stuff. Support the dude.
Yeah, no, that hit me the freaking most. Honestly, those two deaths, the deaths of the Turbines, hit me harder than the deaths of Mikazuki and everyone else.
It's like you knew that it was coming, but you couldn't with Tekadon, but you couldn't prepare yourself for the Turbines.
Oh no, you couldn't. You really couldn't. And even though I had heard about something like that happening, just still watching it, just like it hit me out of left field to the point where I'm still recovering because you killed fourth best girl. Stop it. This show obviously has a lot of best girls for me. I mean, I'll be completely honest. I think the entire female cast, especially of season 2, has been phenomenal.
We gotta talk about Atra and Kudelia now.
And Julieta, I think we might want to talk. I don't know if we want to talk about her a little bit more, but definitely Kudelia and Atra, I think, need to get mentioned a little bit here, because we have had a couple of discussions about the two of them.
Right. And one of them in which just turned into a humorous shouting match between you and I.
Yes. Oh, I hate to keep finding it, but he knows his Japanese better than I do. But
he knows his Gundam better than either of us.
Don't tell him that. Don't let his head get any bigger.
What can I say? He is my Naze.
Really, he's my arch nemesis. I don't know what you're talking about.
What does that make you, Jazzly? As a result,
I'm not that bad because I'm not a dick.
No, you kind of are.
No, I'm an asshole. There's a difference.
Ah, okay, all right.
So, and apparently, and I found this out through him, that there has been circulating that at a promotional event in Japan about a couple months after.
Wait. We need to talk about what happens in the show before we can talk about what happened after.
Fine, talk about the final episode. Why don't we?
Okay, so they've been building up this love triangle between Mikazuki, Atra, and Kudelia, in which both Kudelia and Atra both have the hots for Mikazuki. And
let's say this, it is the most wholesome three-way love triangle I've ever seen put forth in an anime. There's no bickering. There's no
jealousy. Yeah.
It is so wholesome in comparison to everything else, especially when you look at a Gundam show.
Like, personally, I hate love triangles, love squares, love octagons. I hate any of those because it's such a cliche in anime. But I feel like this subplot throughout its 2 seasons came to the most mature ending it could possibly go in. Where it's like you had these two mentalities. You have, the rather traditionally minded Kudelia, who was, she wanted to be with Mikazuki, but obviously she and him are on 2 very different paths, pulling them apart. Her being more focused on the political side of the situation on Mars. Mikazuki obviously is fighting for the future of Tekadon. Meanwhile, you have Atra, who is with Mikazuki every step of the way. They've been friends since their childhood, and it's only appropriate that, she would end up having a child with Mikazuki, because it's like, at first she thought that if she were to reveal her feelings to him, like then and there, it would motivate him to want to stay alive and stay alive. But it's like, hey, it came to like the sad realization that it's like, I'm not more than likely not going to survive this. So if we're going to get out of this, if things get real, real bad, I want to at least have a part of myself live on through you. And in this case,
I think I don't think Mikazuki's thoughts are that
right. It wasn't that complex. Right. But I think it's like Atra sort of like reinterpreted that way, reorganized her goals in that sort of sense, where it's like, so it's not him, but rather she wants to have his baby so that he still survives through him, through their child.
I think it's less of that, but that's a part of it here. But I think part of it is, and I can't remember the exact phrases that happened during the arc with the turbines, the Julius arc, where the turbines get attacked, because the turbines and Takanen team up for a little bit, and you have Atra and Mikazuki go over to one of their ships, and they see all the babies here, and then one of the girls is talking to her about it.
Right, and that's when she gets the idea of, hey, what if both of us can have Mikazuki?
Not just that. No, that comes later, because you're gonna have comments on that because it's funny. Uh-huh. But Atra then wants to have something of Mikazuki because Mikazuki may not survive.
Right. Okay. Oh,
Kudelia comes and visits.
I'm thinking of season 1, not season 2.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes. So Kudelia comes to visit later on in the season. We're in the final five episodes of season 2. Kudelia comes to visit because they're not star-crossed lovers at this point, because Mikazuki still has no real context for human affection, as we've seen in season 1.
Uh-huh.
Kudelia is still growing up. She hasn't hit that market. She's still trying to figure out what it is that she wants. And she's talking with Mikazuki, and Atra sneaks up. I say sneak up because she sees them, comes up behind them, overhears the conversation, just shouts, Kudelia, you do it too. Have a baby with Mikazuki. I'm like, my first thoughts are, Atra, you horn dog. You dirty, dirty girl.
Now kiss.
Now kiss and do the smoochy smoochies. But it is the most wholesome. Now, Kudelia turns it down.
Right, because she has a normal she has enough class to know do not want this sort of thing.
It's like, I love you both, but I don't have this thing here. But I think that the thing that makes this triangle different from a lot of others that I've seen, as far as this isn't treated as a romantic comedy.
Oh, right. Which a lot of these love triangles are.
A lot of these love triangles or harems things are, and that's a
elongated for the sake of keeping it going forever and ever.
Right? They will, they won't. We. This isn't Tenchi Muyo, and this isn't Monster Musume. This isn't
what's that another popular one? Love Hina, whatever. Yeah, it's not that.
It's not Love Hina. No, Love Hina is completely different. I love Love Hina, but no, I love this interaction between the three of them because in the final episodes, it's like, I feel that that Kudelia and Atra both love each other and both love Mikazuki, and they're both fine with each other being with him. And it's such a wholesome discussion and such a wholesome relationship. It looks healthy to me, and I'm okay with that. Like, there's no bickering, there's no yelling, there's no
Kudelia is essentially like, I'm glad it was you, and I'll support you guys all the way. And I'll be sure to take care of your child every step of the way. And
they do. So at the end of the season, we show it's been 5. There's a time skip of at least 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And Atra has a child. The child looks like Mikazuki with Atra's hair color,
which is very heartwarming to see.
And Kudelia comes by, and the one thing I see on their child's arm or wrist is all 3 of their bands.
Right. That is like one of the last shots in the series, and that was very touching.
The last thing that got me out of the series was that you have their child staring at, because during the end credits, the pictures and such of Tekiden and all this other stuff in the corner of a room.
Right. And you see Biscuit's hat next to it.
Right. Biscuit's hat's next to it, and then you get a scene of the kid is called to dinner because Cookie and Cracker showed up. And they go meet them, and you see the kid is actually in the room looking at the pictures, and then he turns and runs to join the rest of the family. That's one of the final shots of the show. Right,
so this whole time, when you see the ending credits for the second half of season 2, you're looking at it from Mikazuki's son's perspective.
And that entire ending, like the last 15 minutes where they wrap everything up after this time skip, hits home the bittersweet ending, but it's so much more sweet than bitter. We've lost a lot of the main characters. We've seen things happen and change. They've been manipulated, they've been used, but they're forging their own futures in a world that no longer needs the child soldier aspect of it.
Right. And this is a world that doesn't need Tekidon anymore.
Tekidon's not needed. So everyone that has survived is working on those features. I think the only change is like a handful of Tekidon's members and Ride change that. They have some closure on their side.
We also get to see like Julieta and Galio. They recovered since then. And it's like throughout the years, they've come to sympathize more and more with Tekidon as the years went by, saying that, in the end of the day, they were more human than any of us, and that's what made them so strong.
Well, I think, no, because Julieta's words, if I remember from the subtitle, was that we feared them because, unlike other people that go onto the battlefield, they have a cause or a crusade they fight for. They start off human, and then they give themselves to the cause. But for Tekiden, these child soldiers, they were fighting to be human. They went to the battlefield to become human, and that's what made them strong, and that's why we feared them. Which I think sums up this entire season so well. This entire season, in especially the last 5 episodes of it here, which nails it home.
So it's like it was their fates were inevitable if that was their only means of being human.
Right. And the other thing that got me was because Orga dies in the third to last episode, Orga dies in a drive-by shooting,
Right.
set up by one of their old
partners, acquaintances, allies,
financial backers.
Yeah.
Again, there's so much more politicking going on here, but Nobliss, I think is his name. He set up an assassination attempt to try and take out Orga, or try and take out some members of Tekkanen when they were in the city of Chels. I don't remember how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Orga is the only one that dies out of the entire thing, but he takes out 2 of the gunmen because he's a badass.
Yeah.
And he dies. Well, fans will be glad to hear that at the end of IBO, Ride, who Orga died, protecting with his body, finds Nobliss, shoots him dead on the crapper after asking him, "Do you remember the name Orga?" Whatever his full name was.
Yeah.
And when Nobliss goes, "Who?" Ride just shoots him.
Right.
And a couple other members of Tekkanen are still there, and they clear out the building of more of Nobliss's men, and they just get out.
Right. And by
anything, that's the sadder ending for some of the members of Tekkanen, but everyone else kind of gets a bit. They're happy.
At this point, those people who seek out to avenge Orga, they chose to return to the life of violence, as opposed to when they were in Tekkanen, they were forced into a life of violence. Here, it's like of their own choosing.
And it's made clear that they have been in contact with the former members of Tekkanen, but once Nobliss shows back up on Mars, all communication cuts off.
Right.
Because they're trying not to incriminate the company that Kudelia has been organizing here. Because the other cool thing that Kudelia has done between season 1 and season 2, which we touched on a little bit, is she's setting up an orphanage. She's setting up a school. She's helping running a bunch of the half metal mines that are on Mars to help work with Mars's own
economy,
independent economy that was set up at the end of season 1.
Yeah. And so she's mainly doing that mostly in the background throughout season 2.
And she's trying to get financing to help out Tekkanen because they're getting cut off from everyone. It's just a really rough ride for them for the entire last 5 episodes when they go back to Mars from Earth.
Right.
It's great. I mean, it's good to see that sometimes. I mean, as much as I like having the upbeat anime endings and such like that, having an ending like this kind of helps ground you in that not everything's going to work out, but you still got to try hard and make it work out in your favor.
Right. And that's definitely it feels very Gundam, where it's like I feel like for a large majority of this franchise feels like very real, very much so based off of real life struggles and politics and war, that it feels like Gundam to me anyways. I may be an anime fan, but don't have like such a big exposure to anime as like other people. I don't look at other genres as much as other people, but I would say that of all my experiences, Gundam has always been like the most relatable franchise I've ever come across in terms of Japanese entertainment. And I would say, it's what keeps me coming back to this beautiful franchise. And I feel like IBO perfectly recaptures what makes Gundam so special. Because
I think the good thing about IBO is throughout its 2-season run, it has been mostly consistent. I've enjoyed any of the characters. There has been a good equal parts of character development and heavy action. It's done a good job of trying to portray these characters trying to go through struggles as they try and come to terms with stuff. It spent a good time trying to have us look at these characters through Kudelia's eyes a little bit throughout most of season 1, I think, as well as Kudelia's own actions through their eyes, because it kind of shows the 2 different versions of Kudelia's trying to fight for peace so that groups like Tekkanen don't exist, and Tekkanen is trying to protect her because she's a client, because part of them also want that dream as well.
Right.
Whether or not they can articulate that desire.
Yeah.
And then season 2 is them trying to uphold this, and then unfortunately, because of they may not want to be an important political piece, but they are. And the fact that they don't recognize that right away is the most heartbreaking, I think.
Yeah. Let's see. So there's other characters we can easily go into, but we're approaching the 2-hour mark now. I mean, we can talk about Shino and Yamagi. We could talk about the new characters like Hush, or there's still so much we can talk about the characters, but I feel like we've talked about like a lot of the we can talk about Galen Mosa, the bearded guy. It's just there's so much stuff to cover here, but I feel like we've covered like the major points, the protagonist, the antagonist, the
one problem I might have with season 2 is that it introduces so many brand new characters. Some of them feel brand new because I don't remember them from season 1 at all.
Right.
Like Noblesse, I don't remember him at all, except in a very, 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 very limited factor until I go back on a wiki going, oh wait, he did what now? So they introduce so many new characters because the story's expanding enough, but it makes it feel like it's not a good continuation for season 1. So I understand a bit where the critiques are coming from, but they're not as much of a distraction to me as they were from other people, like how I disliked Iok so much. And like other people probably enjoyed his character like you, but then there are going to be people like me who hate him to fucking death.
Same thing with Mikazuki, where it's like, there are people who are just not a fan of that type of character, and they would hate to see a character like that be the central focus of this story. It's like, nothing I can do there, nothing I can do to tell you, I can't tell you you're wrong, because that's your opinion. Nobody's wrong. There is no such thing as a right or wrong opinion. It's all subjective, folks.
Although I will say, that particular partnership can work in media. I don't think people think it will work for Gundam, but like I watched the anime Death Angels yesterday while I was at work, and I binge watched the entire 16 episode season, and it was really good, and it was good. It could have. I had no idea what the heck it was at first. I thought it was actually like a supernatural thing, but wasn't. I was kind of disappointed it wasn't that. But it has kind of a Mikazuki and Orga relationship, where you have a very stoic character and a very emotional, bombastic. Not really so much bombastic, but like expressive, wears his heart on his sleeve kind of thing character, and those two's interactions throughout the entire series make it work. And I think that is the main draw that still goes to Iron Blood Orphans here, because Mikazuki is stoic,
right,
unemotive. Like when he emotes, it's that quiet. When he gets angry, it's that quiet rage that's dangerous. When Orga is having his emotional moments, Mikazuki is his ground that keeps him there. So I think their relationship as is explored in their flashbacks in season 1, and then to the penultimate ending of season 2, I think is pretty much what the takeaway from the series is. Sure, you can have a character that doesn't really have an arc, but what's important is the changes that he brings about to everyone around you, or everyone around him, which in this case with Mikazuki is entirely true, because his actions through Orga's orders and Orga's own wish to see his family prosper change history for an innumerable amount of people. So I think the takeaway is how the relationship works, and then once Orga's gone, what Mikazuki does with what remains of Orga's memory. Which to Mikazuki is these are Orga's last orders, we're going to follow them out, and we're going to do it now.
Right.
And that's kind of the takeaway there, because without Orga there, he's still following Orga's orders, but in a way you can kind of see that he misses his friend.
Right.
Especially when he sits there in a cockpit and talks to himself, which I think was the most emotional that Mikazuki's been. And honestly, I think that is perfect for him.
Right. Yeah, I feel like as a character, he's been very consistent throughout.
And that again, I think that's also a moment of character growth, because Orga's gone. Mikazuki is questioning him.
And he sort of takes on what Orga would think and kind of uses that to form his own conscience.
And then that conscience is what drives him to the final fight.
Right.
Of which it's awesome.
Right. And that final moment where he passes away and you see both of the two of them briefly talking to each other. Again, maybe it's only symbolic, or maybe it's to imply that an afterlife exists in this universe.
I think it's more symbolic, to be honest, because that
most
kind
likely,
of symbolism is common in a whole bunch of anime.
The part of the, like, I don't know, maybe it's like the more optimistic part of me likes to think that it is like a real afterlife. And if so,
Like,
either way, it's a beautiful moment.
It is a beautiful moment, especially, and also the one with Amida and Naze, and
Yeah.
I have no problem with that because those are beautiful moments and their spirits live on, and that's fine. But as far as a new type ghost, it might be stretching a little bit because there's no indication of that here. But it's I think it's also kind of for the fans in a way to let them know that, you know, if there is an afterlife sort of thing, and
like, you know, the characters are at peace with dying.
Yes, I think so. So again, it's a good moment for everything here. Right. But as you said, we're getting close to the 2-hour mark again.
Now, let's see if we can find some amount of time before we can go too long. Because we're reaching the 2-hour time. So it's like, as much as I want to talk about other characters, it's like, let's talk about the robots. You know,
let's talk about the one thing people come here for: the mechs.
Oh, trust me, if you've seen some of the comments to my Gundam 0080 reveal, they'll be like, "You talk too much about the robots. Gundam is about the characters."
It's war drama with robots.
It's like, war is bad, but it looks so fucking cool.
It looks so fucking cool.
Weapons of death are bad, but here, buy this plastic model of this brightly colored mecha.
But buy this model kit and build it yourself.
So yes, okay, so we have Barbatos and Gusion returning as Barbatos Lupus and Gusion Full City. Both of them are essentially the same, but they got some fancy new armor, some new weapons. Barbatos looks a bit more different, especially with its more bulkier appearance. The red armored bits definitely stand out a bit. He's got new guns on his arms, which maybe the original Barbatos had. Overall, as upgrades, I don't mind them a bit, but it's like a part of me still likes their Season 1 counterparts. What I really like was Barbatos Lupus Rex, which had after getting upgraded with the mobile arm, pieces of the mobile armor, it's got this more feral, more like bestial appearance, especially with its big elongated claws. He's got a tail that acts like another limb. It goes into, Barbatos Lupus also goes more into beast mode this time around. It looks awesome and amazing. And it kind of fits with the symbolic transition of, Mikazuki further giving up his humanity in order to live fully and embrace the beast within, or rather the demon within, as he fights on the battlefield.
And the one thing I'll say about this, because for Barbatos, for Barbatos specifically here, and from what I'm told, I haven't gotten any more model kits here yet, but I've been building the model kits again.
Yeah.
So I've already got. I gave some pictures to Andres. Hopefully she'll show some of them here about like the construction of Barbatos.
Yeah.
Which shows for one, the model kit for Barbatos Lupus Rex is what I got, and the model kit is so very posable. Uh-huh. It doesn't pop out of the sockets and the joints as easily as my two Astrays I've got.
Uh-huh.
But it's very posable, very flexible, and I really do kind of dig it. It's not as sturdy because it's not as heavy.
Uh-huh.
The one thing I've noticed, especially with this kit, with this build, compared to the other ones I've gotten, is some of the plastic seemed a lot softer. So as I was trimming down the nibs after cutting it out of the frames, I cut into the model piece just a little bit. Uh-huh. Just like a little sliver here and there where I wasn't supposed to, which seems a bit odd. But the plastic they made this one out of just seemed very, very
durable?
Soft in comparison.
Oh, okay.
No, not durable, soft.
Okay.
Soft. I also broke a couple of pegs off one piece. It still fit in and still socketed in there pretty tight, but I ended up breaking some pegs off of it. I had to get a pair of pliers and pull them out.
Uh-huh.
The frame is very interesting because when we were discussing about this a long time ago, about how mech designs seem to get more
slimmer,
thinner and more angular in some aspects here.
Yeah.
Barbatos, the core frame of it is pretty thin at the waist. Like it's super thin at the waist, but it still has
super model thin.
No, we're talking like literal hourglass.
Yeah.
So it's super thin in the middle, in the middle joint where it connects, where the torso connects to the hips.
Mm-hmm.
But the torso is built out pretty broad, and the hips are about the same width in some cases here, and there are some really good leg joints for leg maneuverability and such. The legs and the limbs come off as very, very long. Mm-hmm. In comparison to the body size. I know for some of the other Gundam kits I've got, like the shin parts of the legs are very long. Uh-huh. For Barbados, it's very long. I wonder
if it appeals long because it's got its like very high heel looking feet.
The high heel feet might be part of it, but I'm just talking about the leg portion from the thigh down to the foot, to the base of the foot. It feels considerably taller than some of my other kits, at least proportional wise. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the arms. The arms are also extensively really long.
Yeah, I think that's like for Lupus Rex specifically.
It may be for Lupus Rex specifically, but we're talking about Lupus Rex specifically here. So yeah, they're very long, and they do end in claws.
Yes,
which I think gets to more of that. The thing is, they call it a beast mode. I think it still ties to that giving into that demonic aspect of the way that they've named the Gundam series.
Its name also translates to the King of Wolves.
Yes. Lupus Rex.
And also, I like how when it's upgraded from the Lupus to the Lupus Rex, he gets like this, like that upgrades to the double forehead V-fin, but the way it's designed, it looks more like a crown.
A little bit, because again, Barbados is a Earl and Duke of Hell with ruling 30 legions of demons and 4 kings as his companions to command the legions.
Right.
Let's see here.
I don't. Yeah, like I said, I don't have any strong opinions either way of Gusion Full City.
Gusion, I kind of like Gusion in the previous season.
Yeah,
he looked a little bit more fun. And this one resembled, especially in the last bits of the show, a more of a heavy arms appeal with like Gatling guns popping out from shoulder armor and all this other stuff.
Before I forget, I gotta say, like that new tail weapon that he has, or that Lupus Rex has, it's awesome.
The model I have has a cable wire that is fully posable with it.
Oh, nice.
It also has the upgraded version of the Barbados mace.
Uh-huh.
That is bulky and huge.
He's got to have the mace.
He's got to have a mace.
Yeah. I guess I'm not sure if Gusion had this in season 1, but he's got a giant pair. His shield can transform into a giant pair of pliers.
I think I remember part of the shield from season 1, but I don't remember it turned into the pliers. But yeah, no, using the pliers, yes, that was. Crush that fucker. Crush that fucker. I want more blood. More blood for the blood god.
I'm very glad they went easy on introducing new Gundams in this show, because they only really had 2 new Gundams, which was Bael and Flores. And technically there was Gundam Vidar, but it was actually Chimaris in disguise. So I guess it's like 3 new Gundams as opposed to the 3 Gundams from last season. So it's like 3-3, so it's like balanced itself right now. So it's like, I'm glad they didn't go too crazy with the Gundams, despite there existing like 70 or so of them out there.
And for you mythology buffs, since we're talking about the Gundams being named after demons, Gundam Vidar is actually named after a Norse god. This is a Norse god who is the son of Odin, who kills Fenris at Ragnarok.
So I'm assuming Fenris is supposed to be McGillis in this case.
No, Fenris, Fenrir, the wolf god.
Oh, Barbatos.
So here's the funny thing. I feel like Vidir was almost intended or supposed to be the one to kill
Barbatos,
but instead it was Julia's model.
Yeah.
Which was, which Galahorn model did she have?
That's my least interesting one of them all. In fact, a lot of the outside of, I know it's like they upgraded from the Grazes, so they don't exist anymore, or they're like used very rarely. But the new ones that they have, I find them to be very unmemorable.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. which one that... Because in some of the other spin-off mangas and some other stuff, there are some other Gundams that are named after other demons, but since they're not in the show, we're not really going to go over them here too much.
I will say that I like the one featured in Iron-Blooded Orphans Gecko, which was a manga, I believe, that was in 2016? Yeah. And I like its very asymmetrical look to it. Similar to how Barbatos started out.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, what do you call it? I guess it's called the Gecko, or no, it's called the Gundam Astaroth. And Astaroth just has this, like, gigantic, like, left arm, which looks cool, I think.
Yeah, so I'm planning on buying some more of the model kits here, but I think my favorite one out of the new ones is Bael.
Right, yeah.
Bael is so simple in its design. Like, it doesn't have any of the extraneous strappings that come with, like, Barbados Lupus Rex or Videl or any of the others. It's got the two swords, so it's, like, primarily a close combatant.
Right.
And it looks regal.
Like, and also, like, you gotta remember, like, it's got its original armor, unlike every other Gundam in this franchise.
So, yeah, because it's the original suit from 300 years ago that was repaired and then sealed with the death of the...
Agnika Kairu.
Yes.
Let's see. Oh, its color scheme also reminds me a bit of the High New Gundam.
Which one?
Bael.
Bael. It's
Christian
Bael, not Bael. There's no I, and there's no I in it. All right.
Right. Sure. Gundam Christian Bael.
Gundam Christian. Yes.
For fuck's sake, you amateur! And proceeds to kill you.
And proceeds to stab you.
Like, what was it, McGillis? It's like, we're done, you and me, professionally, McGillis. Or, Galio.
Oh, so true. All right, Julieta, what did she pilot here? God damn it.
It reminded me a lot of, like, remember, again, that's right, you've never seen 00, but there was a character who went by Char-esque moniker of Mr. Bushido, and he had, like, a samurai-looking mech, and it kind of reminded me a bit of that, but greenish, but no, green and white instead of black and white.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, so I can't really compare it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, so far the designs have been pretty good. The one that I thought was actually the coolest,
Vidar?
Not Vidar. Vidar.
I like Vidar a lot.
Vidar has a problem, I think, because, well...
the thing is, we rarely see Vidar in action.
Yeah, we rarely see Vidar in action. Its design is kind of, I would argue, generic for IBO.
Uh-huh.
Like, I'm not seeing anything that makes it stand out along with, like, Bael or Barbados or Gusion or even Julieta's mech.
Maybe it's because I like the color combination of blue and black.
Was it blue? I thought it was purple.
Oh, no. When it becomes Chimerous again, it becomes purple again. In fact, it becomes more purple this time around.
Yeah.
I actually like this design of Chimerous more than it looked in season 1.
Mm-hmm. But I didn't quite care for it here because it felt very uninspired for me as far as a Gundam model in a bunch of these other shows here. Like Gusion had like the giant shield pieces and the weapons that it pulled out from places.
Yeah.
Barbados had its
battle mace.
The battle mace and the horns and everything else that was built on top of it, and all the different kind of armor upgrades it went through.
Yeah.
Furion that Shino pilots turns into a siege engine.
It turns into a four-legged like beast cannon.
Yeah, it's a siege engine from StarCraft.
It also it kind of reminds me. Maybe it was meant to be more of an homage to the gun cannon.
A little bit maybe.
Yeah.
But that, like, some of these Gundams come off to me, some of these mobile suits, I should say, come off to me as a little bit more recognizable and a little bit more interesting in their design, whereas Videl is like, it's so generic. I mean, Bael, in its simplicity, is alluring to me. I actually have it on my wish list for Gunpla I'm going to buy here in the next few months. But everything else about, like, Videl is like, blah. I'm not inspired.
This reminds me of... So, in Season 1, Shino had a Graze that he customized and called it the Ryusei Go. At the beginning of Season 2, he has the Ryusei Go Mark III, and then eventually he gives it up and takes Gundam Flauros and calls it the Ryusei Go Mark IV. So I have to ask, where did Ryusei Go, where's Ryusei Go Mark II?
I think it may have been damaged permanently by Lafter in their training sessions.
Yeah, that makes sense. But it's like, we never saw it. I do love how when Ryusei Go is, the Mark III is given to another character, he repaints it into something that looks a bit like Char's Hyakushiki. Mm-hmm. When it's yellow with like a navy, goldish color, a goldish yellow with a navy blue torso. And it shows a lot of Shino's character, that he's willing to give the same paint job with the same like World War II-esque shark eyes to every single one of his mobile suits, including his Gundam. Of
course. And gotta have consistency.
And let's see, when what was the boy's name who liked him? Yamagi. So when Yamagi eventually, like, he survives, but Shino doesn't, and when Yamagi eventually joins a company that Pops started, on his back he keeps that little pink and white eye logo of Shino's mobile suits on his uniform, which I thought was extremely touching.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that's actually interesting about IBO that we didn't touch on was like the concept of family and love and all of this. They treat relationships with a degree of respect.
Right.
And it's not a joke. It's not a plot line. Mm-hmm. It's the you're seeing the characters kind of grow in what I would argue is probably a really realistic way of how they would grow if people were put in a similar situation like that. And it's a beautiful thing either way. You know, either a platonic, either a deeply familiar brother-like platonic relationship, or a possible romantic one. Uh-huh. There's still beautiful things that they do in the show, and I think that should not be a detractor for people.
Totally, yeah, right. I totally agree with that.
Even if you don't like the show overall, whether you say it was a rush job, it was the Mikazuki doesn't have any character development, which is a complete and utter lie.
But you're free to your own interpretation.
But overall, I think it treats the characters with a moderate respect to their relationship status with everyone, whether it's as family members, as potential love interests, as potential close, not even really intimate, but very close relationships. It's done with a caring enough hand. It's not hammy. It's not over the top. It's not unbelievable. And that's what I think strikes the emotional core of this entire season is that sense of family and relationships, and how do we relate to one another, and how does that how do we interpret that, how do we work with that, and how do we deal. This one's not so much how we deal with that loss, because there's so much loss happening in such a short amount of time. I don't think there's a lot to cope with. There's a lot left to cope with it, but at the same time, there's also a lot of stuff happening that doesn't give them time to cope.
Right. Oh. Okay, so going back to the robot parts a bit, I wanted to bring up one major thing, and that was the mobile armor, and it's the thing that sets this continuity apart from every other Gundam series so far, and that was the entire premise of this continuity. It was essentially Gundam versus Terminator, and I fucking love that.
That is actually kind of cool. Like, if anyone is a friend with me on Facebook, they noticed that when I was actually watching the show, I was adding commentary on the stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, a bird mech who shoots a power beam that splits into different directions? This is awesome.
And it's like, I know there are people out there, Raph, who wishes that the show could focus more on the robot monsters. But it's like, obviously
we got that show. It was called G Gundam.
I guess they wanted more of that, and maybe there are people out there who believes that the robot mobile armor was like pointless in the grand scheme of things, and I personally don't care. It was an awesome distraction, and it led to a very awesome turning point in Mikazuki's character arc, as well as an awesome upgrade to the Gundam Barbato's Lupus.
I've got to say this about the animation for that, because that final fight against the mobile armor where Barbados loses his inhibitors, because apparently there's an inhibitor built into the Gundams
to make it go beast mode.
To make it go beast mode, but it's there. The inhibitor's there to not to make it go beast mode, but to stop it from going beast mode because of the
Gundams were made solely to fight back the mobile armors. Yeah.
Right, but the inhibitor was put in there to specifically stop the feedback from going all out with the Gundam and unleashing the Gundam's like complete full potential of how destructive it could be.
Yeah.
Mikazuki pushes past that, and it has one of the coolest quick shot fights. Now, there's a lot of arguments made for fights that do quick cuts. In live action.
Yeah.
In anime, you kind of have to do that, but I really love that. It's not even a full minute worth of a fight, but it's so dynamic all over the place, up the cliff walls, over the mobile armor, under the mobile armor, cutting its head, slicing its head. Like all of that entire combat when Mikazuki goes just full off, pops the limiters and just goes.
Yeah.
It's great. It's so dynamic. It's one of my favorite. It is probably my favorite fight scene out of the entire thing.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a huge centerpiece for the entire show.
My second favorite though has to be like at the very end where Mikazuki and Akihiro have been damaged by the orbital bombardment, and they're both tearing into shit, and just watching Barbados's tail as its only limb just slicing people open.
Oh yeah,
slicing mobile suits open. It's great.
And yeah, it's an amazing thing. It reminds me a lot of Metal Gear Rex in terms of the mobile armor's design. I thought it'd provide a really great new spin on the Gundam franchise, and it's like I would love for them to explore more of this, what they call the post-disaster timeline, and would love to see maybe the Calamity War, maybe see more of Agnika Kairu, maybe more Gundams and mobile armors out there. Maybe then you would have a full-on Terminator resurrection story arc for this universe. It's just like the fact that we know what it was like the major cause of the Calamity War, where it's like wild AI robots run amok versus Gundams, would be it opens a possibility for this story. And I'm very glad that there's that other manga out there, Gecko, and I just wish that they'll get the chance to explore it. But I don't know, I hear some rumors that some people say that this series turned out to be unsuccessful in the end. Maybe that's why there's such a big priority on Universal Century and build diver shows. But it's unfortunate, but hey, it always leaves more room to the fans' imagination.
I'll say this though, I think with IBO, if I wanted there to be a sequel, I think they've left it off at a pretty good place for it to just be what it is.
Yeah,
I'd like to see instead a prequel.
Yeah,
again during the Calamity War, because let's face it, these demons were built to fight angels, and it kind of might reminisce a bit of Genesis Evangelion when you think about it.
Yeah,
but to be honest, I think that would probably be a better spin would be to see, because the Gundams have always been part of a war effort because they're machines built for war, but built to defend humanity against trying to gain the power of God. You could, again, I'm willing to bet there's some more religious context than what I'm missing, which is fine, because you got Gundams named after devils, you've got mobile armors named after angels, you've got talks of soul and corruption and being human and all this other stuff that's in here. Why not make it kind of a religious metaphor of sorts for any kind of prequel? Because I would like to see more of this in that setting, because you've already given us enough kernels of interesting information that we kind of want to see more of.
Also, I think there's another mobile suit, Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans thing.
There's a couple of different manga going on there, because there's a couple of other Gundams that have shown up in those that we've discussed.
And I guess there's like a spin-off mobile app called Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans Aurora Hunt, and it's focusing on another Gundam. I forgot what its name was, but it's a new protagonist, a new Gundam, and there was some promo art featuring a silhouette of it right next to the Barbatos. But yeah, it looks like they're it looks like Barbatos, or it seems like IBO may continue in some way, shape, or form, but it'll be interesting to see the longer, like, lasting legacy of this series as the years go by. Whether it's going to be eventually grow into a huge fandom, or if it's going to be like a mere footnote in Gundam history. But anyways, one last thing I want to mention was I never noticed it until the fight with the mobile armor, but I noticed finally that there are no beam weapons at all in the Iron-Blooded Orphans series, and they mention it here that beam weaponry has sort of become obsolete because nowadays all armor on mobile suits and ships and all that stuff, all technology has like beam-plated armor, like anti-beam armor, and I thought that was a very interesting thing, a way of explaining why and how the fights in this series are so brutal, and it gives it a brand new aesthetic. I know I've seen some fans that complain that they miss the beam weapons and the beam weaponry, but for me it's like I love it because it helps make this continuity more stylistically and aesthetically distinguished from everyone so far.
I think the most interesting part of it was, and it was brought up to me because they did mention beam weapons, and of course beam weapons have been a continuity staple of Gundam in one form or another for years.
Yeah.
And the mobile armor is the only one that had beam weaponry, but since the Gundams and mobile suits were built to fight against the mobile armors, I think it was shown with Ride is that Ride tried to cut off and take the shot of a beam weapon aimed at a farm plantation on Mars that the mobile armor got diverted to. Well, Ride took the hit. His systems went crazy, but the beam hit him and then split into four other beams, or not four, like several other beams that still hit the town.
Right.
And when I was watching, I was wondering, it's like, oh wait, so the beam can split into stuff, and then they explain it's like, no. It was refracted off of the armor because the mobile suit has this coating that reduces the effectiveness of beam weapons. I'm thinking, well, the beam weapons still kind of scramble to the system, so it's not entirely useless.
Right.
But because of that, in the IBO world, they've ended up going for more melee weaponry, such as the mace and the katana,
and the axes,
the axes, and the physical punching, and the actual physical ballistas for the guns and everything.
Right. Or instead of like giant cannons, they got giant fucking harpoon guns.
Right. Over that here, which actually kind of changes the dynamic because Gundam in the original series was built as to introduce beam weaponry, because the beam weaponry was powered by the Gundam's own reactor, and it therefore made it more powerful than all the other conventional weapons that like the Zaku's or the Zeon had at the time. Here, all of the fights are built because, hey, we made beam weapons useless, so therefore we've got to fight, in much more close quarters than before.
All right, then. So it looks like we are just right about to approach the 2.5 hour mark, just like our last review 2 years ago. So I think now we've pretty much focused on covered like most of everything from the aesthetics to the mobile suits to the characters to the story and plot progression. So overall, man, what are your final thoughts on Mobile Suit Gundam, Iron-Blooded Orphans Season 2, as well as IBO as a whole?
All right, first thing, to add to your comment, second verse, same as the first. A little bit better, whole lot worse.
Yeah, so I can definitely agree with that.
Mostly because I'm still here. What are you thinking? So to rate the second season of IBO, I'd have to give it, honestly, a solid. I have to give it. I mean, I was actually thinking about this earlier. I would have to give IBO a 3.5 out of 5. I can understand where some fans would be disillusioned with this. I can also understand where some
watch your wording here.
I can also understand why some fans might really enjoy this, like you and I have.
Yeah.
I do think that there are some criticisms to be raised about some pacing, some of the story breakups, how the focus of the season wasn't focused on Tekkanen so much as Tekkanen's reaction to everything happening around them, whereas Tekkanen trying to take charge of themselves made it feel like they were actually losing control instead of actually trying to grab onto it and maintain it. So I'd have to say I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. That doesn't mean I think it was terrible. I do think it's worth watching if you want to see a different take on Gundam and what Gundam can be.
Right.
As well as watching, if you like a little bit more of the politicking side, you may like season 2 more than season 1 because I felt there was a lot more politics involved. I didn't mind that so much, but I do felt that took away from the focus of season 2 from being on Tekkadan, taking charge of their lives instead they're being forced to react to changes thrust upon them, and that took away from what they could be because it started making them feel like supporting characters in McGillis' story. Which I realize we never went into. We may have to make a second part of this.
Oh, God.
So we may have to actually...
oh, man, damn it. There's still so much more to talk about. But
there's so much more to do with the characters that you get to get understanding of how some of them work. I think McGillis gets a bit too much of a focus in this series. He is kind of this series' Char. In all honesty, he still is. He becomes an ally, but more of for
all the wrong reasons.
More of an enemy of my enemy is my friend, because Tekkadan still doesn't trust Galahorn. Galio wants to try and change Galahorn and basically do a coup d'etat. But he fails, and then Tekkadan has to take the fall, which the name of Tekkadan does, but the spirit of Tekkadan lives on. So there is that. There is a lot that can be taken from this and enjoyed, like we have. The characters are still great, so the character moments are really pretty good. I just think the biggest attraction is, as we said at the beginning, the focus of the show isn't on Tekkadan anymore. It's on McGillis using Tekkadan and how Tekkadan reacts, which I think is a poor treatment of the characters as we've seen them, and even the stuff they've done with the characters has been great. Still suffers from some of the anime tropes, such as the death flags. Like if you start getting a whole bunch of exposition for a character, even a character that's been around for a long time, since season 1, the chances are they're going to die either in this episode or the next. So that's kind of a really terrible anime trope, I think, because it makes me want to connect with these characters like, oh, this is nice, and you're going to kill them off in 5 minutes.
Well, I think you took the words out of my mouth in that it's like, yeah, I enjoyed season 2 a whole lot. I enjoyed the twists and turns, the characters. I enjoyed the action. The ending felt very appropriate for these characters and their journey. Overall, I think I liked season 1 a bit more. I thought it was a bit stronger and better handled, pacing-wise, character-focused-wise. But I still would give Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphan Season 2 a 4 out of 5. I'm not sure if I gave, because I don't go by 0.5, I'm not sure if I gave Season 1 a 4 or a 5, but I think I gave them, I would be comfortable giving both them a 4, as well as the overall series a 4 out of 5. I think it's very good, slightly flawed, but still is a very good, unique entry in the Gundam franchise. And if you're someone, even though I always recommend, if you want to get into Gundam, to start from the very get-go with 0079, be it the movies or the TV show. I like the TV show. I've never watched the movie trilogy, nor do I care to. But I would have no qualms about somebody going into Gundam through this series alone. It's like I've seen people comment that, for them this was their introduction to Gundam, much like how Wing was for us. And then, you know what? I feel like this would be a perfect jumping on point for Gundam. And, it's brutal, it's emotional, it's complicated, it's morally ambiguous, it's got everything you could ever want in a Gundam series with something new, to distinguish itself from the rest of the pack. So
I'd have to agree that that both the entire series of IBO from episode 1 to episode 50, definite strong 4 out of 5. If it is your first Gundam show, there's not a lot of focus. There's surprisingly not a lot of focus on the Gundam itself, rather than for some exposition about like the Calamity War and how these things were used as weapons, and the Elena Vignana system.
It's in a way, it's kind of feels like a late Universal Century show, like Victory or F91, where it's like, oh, this is a Gundam. These things were used in the ye olden days of the 1 Year War.
in the olden days. And there are some comments on the previous video that suggest that no, this is a later Universal Century kind of thing. I don't agree with that, but it feels like the hate. This is the twilight hours of the Gundams in this universe, which is fine. I mean, you can tell any kind of different stories with Gundams, anywhere from Revolutionary Wars to
tournaments
to fighting tournaments to martial arts tournaments with Gundams,
to martial arts tournaments with plastic models.
So even then, or an MMO with them. I mean, why not? Why not? Let's do things.
Meanwhile, every single fan who's listening right now is like, "Boo!" I still haven't watched Diver, so I don't know what the hate is all about. But oh well.
I got comments and thoughts on it, but that's not the purpose of this.
Right.
So, but as for Iron-Blooded Orphans, I think it's really good. It feels like, in a way, I'm really hoping it's not being prophetic with it being the Twilight Hour of Gundams. It's Twilight Hours of Gundams in the IBO universe, in this Desolation Century, or this
post-disaster timeline.
Post-disaster timeline, yes. Which is fine. Because after this, like the Gundams are kind of destroyed after this. I get the feeling that they've been destroyed after the end of the final conflict.
And the Gundams are never been seen again. Okay.
And that's fine. If this is your first Gundam series, there's a variety of them out there. If you really enjoyed this series, then kudos. Welcome to the world of Gundam.
We're very sorry.
It's so much bigger than you imagine. You were going to be watching your screen for a long time. If you're into it late because you're a fan of Gundam like us, then hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you got something out of it, even if you didn't enjoy it. Hopefully it gave you some memories that you would have liked, or some things that you would have cared for.
And even if you're a fan who didn't like Iron-Blooded Orphans, hopefully that gave you a better appreciation for the Gundam shows you do like.
And so be it. More power to you here, because
totally.
Gundam shows are so varied. I really do like the ones that step out of the primary Universal Century, and there are some diehard fans that don't want it anywhere outside of Universal Century whatsoever, because it has to be Gundam at all. It has to be in the Universal Century. I'm like, that's not entirely true.
I feel like
I've survived through 3 different reboots of Godzilla. I'm perfectly fine with them being wherever. Same for Gundam.
I feel like the reason why Gundam has been able to last as long as it has is because it's able to adapt and change into the stylings of whatever's popular at the time, while still remaining true to the core values of Gundam.
And that's just it. I mean, Gundam originally was a war story. This is kind of a war story. It's a different side of the war, arguably a losing side, but it kind of still brings home the character interactions and the mecha battles and nice short bursts of mecha action in between what could be argued as longer drawn out character moments. And I enjoyed both. And hopefully you do too. I mean, as much as I like the Burning Finger, and the music that goes with it, I still enjoyed the action aspects, as these guys kind of react to these different problems get thrown at them when they just want to not have to do military work. I mean, so yeah, I would definitely recommend the series to anyone who's a fan of Gundam, or even maybe want to start into Gundam to see what the fuss is all about.
It's not a bad place to start.
It's not a bad place to start, and I would recommend it to any of my friends who are Gundam fans or who are Mecha fans to give it a try.
Definitely. We give it a strong 2 thumbs up from the both of us. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on this journey through the Iron-Blooded Orphans saga of ours. Thank you so much for sticking with us, either whether or not you've been a longtime fan of mine or just came on board ever since I started Gundam Month way back in 2017. Hopefully you've enjoyed this review of ours. Thank you very much, Denny, for joining me on this perilous journey through death and destruction and brutal fights. So we bid farewell.
Next time we're starting earlier in the day.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We're starting earlier next time.
But for all of us, just to let you know, if we're in a way, if sorry for having this be like roughly 2 hours and 40 minutes, but it's in a way, it's like,
oh, hey, we passed last time. We passed it by 10 minutes.
Sorry, not sorry. This is how we roll. This is how KaijuNoir, the KaijuNoir channel works. And if you've been around, thank you so much. So let us know what you think of Iron-Blooded Orphans, whether you loved it, you hated it, or you're indifferent to it. Let us know in the comments down below. Let us know what you think of this review. Thank you very much for your support, everybody. We bid farewell to the post-disaster timeline, as to I will review whatever the next Gundam series will be next time when I talk about Gundam on my channel. So until next time, everybody, I have been Andres Perez, aka KaijuNoir. He has been Denny Roth, aka Draco Rollin. And until next time, new types, take care.
And remember, Atra is best girl.
If you're into that sort of thing.
She's adorable, so sue me.